My siblings received luxurious gifts, but I received body wash for our birthdays. Now that I'm moving out, everything is coming apart. I am a 25-year-old woman living with my parents. I have two siblings, Joseph and Katrina. As the oldest, I was the first to begin employment. For a long period, just my father and I worked to support the family. My mother was either ill or too weary to work. Over the years, I've realized that her condition is self-inflicted. She would rather sit on the couch all day, watching TV and overeating than work. I gave up trying to convince her to start working a long time ago. My brother and sister began working shortly after finishing school. Unfortunately, they were unable to hold their jobs for long. My brother was a robber, and my sister blamed her lack of employment on her mental condition. The temporary financial comfort we felt when they started working did not endure. I eventually had to take on additional shifts at work, knowing I couldn't rely on them. I worked hard to move forward in my company. Now, I make more than most individuals my age. Many people compliment me on my accomplishments, yet I feel like an imposter when I look back. I have not done anything for myself. 70% of my earnings goes toward home expenses, leaving me with only 30%. That quantity barely meets my needs. On top of that, there is always an unforeseen expense at the end of the month that I must cover. I work so much that I rarely come home, and when I do, it's a nightmare. At least I get paid for my job, but no one pays me to clean the house. I need to clean, do laundry, wash dishes, and make sure we have adequate groceries. My mother and sister barely contribute. My mother spends the entire day watching television, whilst my sister locks herself in her room and only comes out to hang out with her friends or get into trouble. I can't ask my father or brother for aid because they adhere to traditional gender norms. This is the type of family I come from. Although I disagreed with those ideals, I felt I had no choice because I was living in their home. Every time I tried to speak up, my mother told me to find my own place. She understands that I cannot afford my own house while also supporting the family. She also considers my heart is too sensitive to leave them to fend for themselves, or so she believes. None of this is the reason I am writing this piece. It isn't even the reason I'm so frustrated. My frustration stems from the fact that my parents have once again demonstrated their preference for my brothers over me. It was my birthday 2 days ago. My gift? Body wash. Yes, body wash. You might think I am ungrateful, but Katrina celebrated her birthday last month. She had a lavish surprise party that we couldn't afford. I had to take on more consulting work to help pay for it. This came after my father said he had enough money to pay for the party after I initially declined. After the party, he approached me with a sob tale about miscalculating expenses. He also told me that he had borrowed from bad people and was frightened they would harm us. To protect my family, I chose to pay for the party. I was very disappointed because they constantly do this. Whether it's a holiday or a birthday, they always prioritize my siblings' gifts before my own. This year, my brother received a new gaming system as a gift, while my sister received a certificate for our city's most costly spa. And me, I received body wash. After everything I've done for this family, is body wash all I deserve? I'm not sure why, but this time I was rather offended. Every time they did this, I found a method to get around it. I persuaded myself they didn't mean it, that they adored and valued me. However, I believe it is time to quit telling myself lies. That body wash was the final straw. I exploded after receiving it. I was unable to restrain myself. I got a tremendous lump in my throat, and my wrath overtook me. I asked them why I couldn't throw a big celebration like Katrina and Joseph. All I got was body shampoo, not even a good cake. My father became enraged and asked why I was being so disrespectful when I understood their financial predicament. At that point, I began laughing and asked him how he could say it with a straight face. He was the one who went into debt to ensure Katrina had a spectacular birthday celebration, but he couldn't afford more than $20 for mine. I was tired of being treated differently. At that point, I had to inquire whether I was adopted. Is that why they treated me like a stranger? I work hard at my job, come home, and take care of everyone, but all I receive is body wash. They must be kidding. My mother started crying at that point, saying she hated it when I had these little outbursts. So it's all right for her to have emotions, but when I display mine, I'm disrespectful to the family? That is exactly what I interpreted from her comment. She has hundreds of various emotions during the day, and we are expected to tolerate them. But if I get outraged over something legitimate, I'm labeled theatrical. Fine. I decided to quit arguing and go to my room. When they tried calling, I pretended to be asleep. I sat there for the entire time, just thinking. I was really unhappy. Even though I keep myself busy all the time, I am unable to fall asleep. My thoughts center on how sad I am. Most people my age are buying their first car, getting married, or purchasing a home. I see some of them at work doing just that. Even though they earn less than me, I am envious. Despite being ahead in my job, I am far behind in life. I have no identity or purpose in this world. My only purpose is to serve these ungrateful people. Now that I think about it, how did I allow them to treat me this way? It had been going on for so long that I had no idea they were taking advantage of me. My thoughts on this have grown extremely apparent as a result of the event with my birthday gift. Now I understand I don't want things to stay this way forever. Something needs to change. I feel like I'm accomplishing nothing with my life, and I'd like to know what I can do to alter that, to have my own purpose. Update 1. I did it. I moved out 2 months after my original post. I can't believe I moved out only 2 months after the birthday incident. My apartment is small and sparsely furnished, but it is mine. Do you want to know the first thing I did after I finished moving? I lay in my bed for hours, with no one phoning me to repair any minor issue. It was an odd sensation. I had no idea that resting in bed could be so cathartic. You're undoubtedly wondering how I moved, especially given my controlling family. It was not easy, but I completed it. First, I took their counsel and began setting boundaries. I merely paid the bare minimum for household bills and saved the remainder. I also took on more shifts at work and saved the money. When my parents inquired about the money, I explained that it would be included in my year-end bonus. It was difficult, but as soon as I gathered enough for the deposit, I told them to go to hell and moved into my new apartment. Once I had picked which apartment to rent, I informed my parents that I was leaving. It wasn't a pleasant conversation. They were enraged and inquired whether living with them was indeed that horrible. I assured them it wasn't about them, but about me. I was getting older and needed to get more independence. I couldn't do it if I kept living with them. Besides, Mom had always said I should get my own apartment. Of course, my mother was offended by my reply and labeled it snarky. She claimed to want only the best for me, but I mocked everything she said. I realized I couldn't win that fight, so I apologized and went on. My family was very resistant to my desire to emigrate, but there was nothing they could do. I'd already signed my lease and was prepared to go. In protest, none of them helped me pack. I had to approach a couple coworkers for assistance. Janet and Lisa, 2 acquaintances from separate divisions at work, were the only ones who were aware of my predicament at home. When I told them I was relocating, they jumped for delight. When I requested for aid with the move, they were more than happy to help. We completed transferring everything a few days ago, and now I am in my practically empty apartment. I don't have much, yet I'm satisfied. I can't wait to start living independently. Update 2. I've been living in my apartment for more than a month. It's been a tough month, but I'm happier than ever, or was until a few hours ago. Let me quickly recap what transpired over the last month. I've been furnishing my flat and even had a housewarming party. Also, now that I have my evenings free, I've begun to get out with friends and even meet new individuals through them. It is wonderful to finally have a social life after so long without one. Honestly, I think I'm finally living for myself. Aside from developing a social life, I've started dating someone Lisa introduced me to. In the past, I never went out with anyone since I didn't have time. My family was continuously disrupting my plans with some sort of emergency. But now that I live farther away, they can't do that. You're probably wondering how my connection with my family has fared over the last month. Actually, none of them had messaged me at all throughout this time. They've been unusually quiet, which has been disconcerting at times. I considered messaging them, but I stopped myself. I feel like I'm usually the one to break the ice and apologize after our disagreements. I do not want to be that way anymore. I want to be treated with the same respect as any other member of the family. So I opted not to reach out. For a while, I felt our relationship had ended. That was until my mother contacted me this afternoon when I was at work. I was astonished to see her name on the screen, but I responded. As soon as I picked up, she asked, "Where's the check?" At first, I was perplexed because I had no idea what check she was referring to. Had she forgotten that I wasn't living with them anymore? What were her thoughts? Anyway, she wondered how I expected them to function without my assistance. I told her that she had 2 healthy, capable children who could help pay the expenses. They've had a month to look for work. What have they been doing during that time? She then questioned how I could be so inconsiderate to my siblings' plight. So I questioned her how I could feel sympathy for a criminal and a lazy girl. They damaged their own job possibilities. Couldn't they learn from me and persevere? I told my mother that I was not going to send anything and that they needed to make their own plans. Then I hung up. She contacted me numerous more times, but I did not respond. Later, my father called and tried to reprimand me, But I hung up. I couldn't believe what I had done. I had never cut someone off while they were speaking before. But, to be honest, the last month has been so tranquil, and reconnecting with them has reminded me of how tumultuous my life once was. I don't think I want to upset my peace by reintroducing them into my life. I wish they had remained silent. They should have cut me off and left me alone because, in reality, I was never actually a part of the family. Now I see that they only wanted me for as long as I could provide for them. I was living an unsustainable lifestyle because I was always there to support others. But now that's over. I have hit my limit. It is time for me to focus on myself. I should have done this long ago. They have attempted to make me feel bad, but it isn't working. I believe it's because I'm now immune to it. Update 3. Honestly, I'm not sure what's wrong with my family. I can't believe I am related to such strange individuals. I knew they were capable of going to extremes to achieve their goals, but this is too much. I'm not going to be patient with them after this. They're about to witness a side of me they didn't realize existed. It had been 2 days since my relatives began pestering me for money. I've repeatedly told them that I'm not giving them anything. They need to devise their own plan. If they can't pay their bills, how can they expect me to support them when I already have my own expenses? It's totally irresponsible and irrational. I've been ignoring them for the past 24 hours, concentrating on purchasing additional furnishings for my flat. It's finally beginning to look like a house, and I'm really pleased with myself. I can't believe I now have items to call my own. Unfortunately, I can't truly appreciate this success because they've been so obnoxious. I've ignored them the entire time, which is presumably why they decided to come to my residence. Yes, they came to my flat last night while I was hosting a little gathering. Here's what happened. Yesterday was a Friday night, and a few of my pals wanted to go out. But I was too exhausted. Lisa and Janet agreed, so we planned a book and wine night at my apartment. 2 more girls joined us, and we were having a terrific time, until there was a disturbance outside the door. I live in a quiet apartment community, so this was concerning. We attempted to ignore it, but it became louder and soon reached my door. When I opened it, my sister, father, and brother were arguing with the building manager. They demanded to be allowed into my apartment since they were family. I couldn't believe what I was witnessing. I informed the manager that I knew them, but they were not welcome. My father looked hurt and claimed he only wanted to talk. I asked him to look at the time, which was 10 p.m. I informed them that if they wanted to see me, they could have called ahead. Also, how did they know where I lived? That's when my sister stepped in, stating she learned from a friend who had seen me at the complex. Then she looked around and noted that I was living large. She asked why she couldn't live with me. I looked at her like she was insane. Why would I want to live with someone who is so lazy? I would have to feed her and clean up after her. I have not forgotten the dynamics of the previous few years. I told them to go because they were not welcome, particularly at that hour. My father refused, saying they wouldn't go unless I spoke with them. I informed him that I was not interested in talking, especially since I had guests. Then my brother began ranting at the top of his lungs, addressing my friends and calling me a useless sister. He then forced his way into my flat and started verbally assaulting me. Between him, my sister, and my father, I felt completely overwhelmed. Meanwhile, my friends sat stunned, watching this horrific show. Things only got worse. My father and brother began rifling through my belongings and turning them upside down. I cried because I saw them treat my possessions so disrespectfully. I implored them to stop, but they did not listen. They said I was to blame and demanded a check. That is, until security arrived. It turned out that Janet had gone to contact security as soon as my father and brother began disrupting the calm. When security arrived, my father and brother refused to go and attempted to resist. That was a major mistake since the uproar became so loud that they had to call the cops. My father and brother are currently in jail for trespassing in my flat and disrupting the peace. They will not be released until Monday, and I have already filed charges. I am bringing them to court over this. They've gone too far, and I'm not going to let them get away with it. This marks the end. They've gone too far, and I'm not going to let them drag me farther into their mess. Update 4. I wanted to post an update sooner because it has been 4 months, but I chose to wait until everything was resolved. Now that the trial has ended, I can finally tell you everything. I think many of you will be relieved to know that my family received what they deserved. Starting with my brother, the judge was harsh on him because he had previously shoplifted and is a repeat offender. He was sentenced to 1 year in prison. Unfortunately, this will remain on his record, making it even more difficult for him to establish a future for himself. But, honestly, given the way he's been spending his life, he had little chance. I'm hoping that his time in jail would straighten him out and help him set priorities. I've seen folks considerably younger than him who have significantly more structured lives. My father had to pay a fee to the court and is currently on probation. If he even receives a traffic ticket, he's done. He needs to be really cautious for a time. Otherwise, he'll wind himself in jail. Both the judge and the city take these transgressions very seriously, which is why they have met with severe punishments. Now, about my mother. Years of gluttony and idleness have now caught up with her. She is at high risk of heart disease due to her poor lifestyle. Because of how quickly her health is deteriorating, doctors estimate she has less than 2 years if she does not make radical adjustments. Knowing her, she probably doesn't care because she believes she will live forever. I tried for years to convince her to eat healthier, but she never listened, so I gave up. If her high cholesterol does not kill her, my sister most likely will. Speaking of my sister, she's been the talk of the town lately, and not for the right reasons. Since money has been tight and no one is funding her lifestyle longer, she decided to take matters into her own hands. She somehow became acquainted with the wrong crowd, girls who were rumored to be selling certain items on the street corner. It is both unlawful and highly harmful. I heard about a week ago that she had been detained for doing something questionable. I wouldn't be surprised if she ends herself in a physically perilous situation as a result of her chosen route. People have asked me to speak with her, but she chose this life. Honestly, she probably thinks I'm stupid for working an honest job. No insult to anyone in that business, but I've witnessed what some of these girls go through. There is no happy ending in sight for her, only substance misuse, additional jail term, and perilous situations. My mother has fallen multiple times as a result of the stress that Katrina has caused. But Katrina still lives with our parents, so they are enabling her conduct by allowing her to be there. Even though she is making money, she is definitely not spending it appropriately or paying her responsibilities. You are undoubtedly wondering how I know all this. I found out from a credible source. My parents are now receiving food stamps, and my father's working hours have been decreased. He spends most of his time at home, with my mother and Katrina. I can only imagine how hungry everyone must be in that house right now. But it isn't all for them. In addition, they must compensate for the damage they caused to my flat. I was able to recover the items they damaged, but they still need to pay the money the judge ordered. I feel sad for them, but not enough to intervene and help. It's what it is. They made their decisions, and now they must live with the consequences. Update 5. I have an update on several recent events, and the truth is that my family is falling deeper into the troubles that, as I frequently repeat, they made for themselves. They are the type of people who try to dig themselves out of a hole. I'm not sure if there is a way back for them, but I do know that it is not my obligation to get them out of the holes they've dug themselves. And they keep getting deeper. To begin with, my father, who was supposed to pay for the damage he and my brother committed in my apartment, just did not do it. Many of the comments I received in my last update predicted this outcome, and they were correct. The worst part is that this time he didn't even try. He made no effort to demonstrate his willingness to comply with the judge's instruction. However, the judge was correct when he cautioned that any failure would result in his return to prison. A sneeze may land him in jail, which is exactly what occurred. It wasn't a real sneeze, but the fact that he didn't pay what was ordered resulted in a trip to jail. I discovered a few days ago that he is currently serving time there. The irony of the situation is that my father was, in theory, the only one working in that house. I'm not sure how my mother will cope without him now that he's in prison. The last time I spoke with someone close to the family, they said there was almost no food in the house. Given my mother's health issues, this is really frightening. But, to be honest, all I feel is a frigid remoteness from the entire thing. For years, I was the one who kept that house afloat, and they emotionally and financially abused me. They are now paying the price for their own recklessness. On top of that, my mother is alone in the house, not only because my father is in jail, but also because my brother and sister are now behind bars. My brother had already been in jail for a while, as you may recall, but now my sister has joined him. Yes, her business venture ended just as expected. She was arrested. Everyone saw it coming, except her. Her condition worsened when she began using in addition to selling, leaving her even more vulnerable and without much judgment. An undercover detective caught her in the act, putting an end to her attempt to maintain an unsustainable lifestyle. Now she's awaiting trial, but I don't think she'll come out unscathed. The worst aspect is that she cannot afford professional counsel, therefore she is represented by a public defender. I do not mean to be unkind, but I do not see much hope for her. As for my mother, I honestly don't know what will happen to her life now. She is staying in the house that previously housed 5 people, but it is now completely empty. My father is in prison, my sister is awaiting trial, and my brother has already served time. The house is emptied, And the saddest thing is that she has no one to care for her. For years, she did nothing but rely on others to bring her money and food. She can scarcely leave the house anymore due to her health difficulties. I'm not sure how she'll survive. I know they get food stamps, but that isn't enough to survive on. In short, my family has entirely disintegrated. All I have left is my peace, and while it may sound harsh, I do not regret having removed myself. Update 6. I feel horrible for having to deliver bad news, but it's no longer my bad news, it's my family's. Despite the fact that everything is unfolding in slow motion, I can't help but feel relieved that I am not personally involved in this disaster. To begin, I have finally regained my money. It wasn't an easy process, and as expected, my father didn't have the money to pay me. The only reason Dad ultimately did was because my mother had to take out a loan to bail him out of jail. The fact that my father was in jail for contempt made matters even more problematic, but she eventually received the money after considerable work. Of course, it was not her own idea, but rather my mother's desperate desire to get my father out of jail. My father's release from jail is arguably the only bright aspect of this predicament. During this period, my mother had been living with a relative while attempting to resolve my father's legal issues. She left the house for an extended period of time, and as one might imagine, it was abandoned. Now, the neighborhood we lived in was never ideal, particularly for leaving a house unsecured. Apparently, it has been vandalized and completely looted. The most worrisome aspect is that according to what I've been informed, there are people living there now. People who, from what I understand, may be previous clients of my sister. The fact that people are squatting within the house is only the beginning of the problem. Still, if my parents are able to remove them, which I doubt will be easy, I'm not sure whether what remains is still a house. It bothers me to think about the state of the place I once called home, especially since I put so much time and effort into keeping it up when I was still living there. But at the end of the day, it is no longer my home. It's not in my name, and it's not my responsibility to solve it. My parents will have to face this on their own. My siblings continue to serve their sentences. There have been little updates on that front. What surprises me the most about all of this is how quickly the situation deteriorated after my departure. It's as if my departure was the final nail in the coffin of a scenario that was already decaying from within. My sister-in-law's DNA kit to ruin my marriage backfired when her son's test revealed shocking truths about her own family. I met my husband James, in our late 20s, and we soon fell in love. We married after 2 years of dating and have had a lovely and quiet life together ever since. We welcomed our gorgeous kid, Nathan, and felt like the ideal family. I felt nothing could separate us until Sarah, my sister-in-law, decided to poke her nose into our life. Sarah and I have never gotten along. From the minute James introduced me to her, it was evident that we were not going to get along. I'm not saying I didn't try, but Sarah made no effort to care. She accused me of wanting to overshadow her at her wedding because I was dressed in a cream-colored gown. To clarify, Sarah intentionally chose cream-colored outfits for all of her bridesmaids. However, on her special day, it became about me stealing her spotlight. From then on, it was a never-ending game of sarcastic remarks, backhanded compliments, and petty behavior. If I wore a new dress, Sarah would say, "It's cute, but I liked it better when I saw it in the store last year." If Nathan accomplished something, she'd minimize it by comparing him to her own son, Tommy. Despite this, James and I always attempted to ignore Sarah's petty behavior. We wanted Nathan and Tommy to grow up as close as siblings. Things, however, took a nasty turn this past Christmas when Sarah decided to create havoc in an unexpected way. For Christmas, she gave Nathan one of those popular DNA test kits. At first, I didn't think much about it. Nathan has always been interested in science and enjoyed knowing about his family history. Nonetheless, it was not a typical present for a child. That night, James approached me privately. He told me Sarah had made some weird, almost cryptic comments to him, such as, "It's about time you got some answers," and "The truth always comes out." It didn't take long for me to put the pieces together. Nathan has green eyes, whereas James and I have brown ones. Of course, anyone with a basic understanding of genetics is aware that recessive features such as green eyes can pass down through generations. But Sarah had been making subtle, passive-aggressive statements for years, implying that James might not be Nathan's father. I was infuriated. Not only was she awful to us, but she was also involved with my son. We agreed to allow Nathan to take the test if he wanted to, knowing that the findings would confirm what we already knew. Nathan is our son, and the test would reveal nothing more. Nathan was enthusiastic about the science underlying the DNA test. He was excited to learn about his lineage and family roots, so we assisted him with the process, and he completed the test. Meanwhile, Sarah's son, Tommy, had been observing everything with great curiosity. Tommy, a curious 14-year-old, decided he wanted to take a DNA test too. Sarah's husband, Todd, thought it would make a good family activity, so they got a kit for him as well. What began as harmless curiosity quickly escalated into a family nightmare. Nathan received his results a few weeks later. Everything was as expected. James was clearly his father. But then we got the shock of our lives. When Tommy's results arrived, it was discovered that Todd was not his biological father. Sarah had an affair, and Tommy was not Todd's child. Todd was devastated. He had reared Tommy as his own, unaware that Sarah had been unfaithful. To make matters worse, Todd sought a paternity test for their younger daughter, who was just 7. The results confirmed his greatest fears. He wasn't her father either. Sarah's life was collapsing in front of her eyes, and it was not a quiet or private collapse. The entire family found out, and the consequences were harsh. Todd filed for divorce and left the house within a few days. The irony of the situation was hard to ignore. Sarah's attempt to undermine my marriage exposed her own lies. Tommy was the person who suffered the most. Nathan was also infected. He and Tommy had always been close, and seeing his cousin suffer through this upset him terribly. He began asking questions about why Tommy's father was no longer present, and it hurt my heart to hear how concerned he was for his cousin. Sarah's life deteriorated over time. Todd pressed for full custody of the children, seeking to limit Sarah's involvement in their lives. Sarah was a wreck at family gatherings, with a pale face and red eyes from crying. She appeared defeated. Sarah contacted me one day and requested assistance. She wanted me to talk to Todd and persuade him to lighten off on the custody agreement. She was trying to save what was left of her relationship with her children and turned to me for advice. At first, I was stunned. How could she have the arrogance to ask for my help after everything she had done to destroy my marriage and cause havoc at every opportunity? At first, I ignored her calls and refused to aid her. But as the days passed, I found myself wondering about Tommy. He was the real victim in all of this. Despite the fact that none of it was his fault, he bore the brunt of the pain. James, of course, warned me to keep out of it. He was confident Sarah had made her bed and would now have to lie in it. Part of me wondered whether I could help the youngsters involved find some serenity. It was not their fault that their mother made poor decisions. So I'm at a crossroads, confused about what to do. Should I help Sarah or let her suffer the repercussions of her actions? What would you do in my position? Update 1. I wanted to provide an update on what has occurred since my previous post, and I hope it puts some light on the complex situation we are dealing with. Sarah continues phoning me, and it's becoming exhausting. I expected her to cool down or back off soon, but she hasn't. She's relentless. On one especially horrible day, she called me 3 times in a row, leaving lengthy, sobbing voicemails. I could hear the despair in her voice, but I couldn't feel much pity. At one point, my husband James became so frustrated that he couldn't take it anymore. He called her himself. James rarely loses his temper, so when he called, I knew things had gotten out of hand. From across the room, I could hear his voice as he snapped, telling her he was tired of her insulting me and manipulating our family. After that chat, things became worse. Sarah's tone changed again. She began sending me multiple text messages, alternating between pleading for my assistance and accusing me of attempting to ruin her life. She was pleading for my help, telling me how much she wanted me to talk to Todd and repair things. The next thing I knew, she was calling me manipulative, alleging I was jealous of her and her family and intended to destroy her marriage. Throughout all, my main focus has been the children. They are innocent in all of this, but they are suffering the most. I can't quit thinking about Tommy and Nathan. Tommy's real father's identity must have been traumatic to him, and it's evident he's having difficulty processing it. It's difficult for me to see him suffer through this without being able to help. Nathan, on the other hand, isn't sure what's going on but feels something isn't right. We have explained it to him, but he is still too young to understand anything. We had a family gathering a few days ago, and Nathan wanted to play with Tommy like he did before. They used to be quite close, inseparable actually. However, when Tommy arrived, he was distant, quiet, and scarcely engaged with Nathan. Nathan wanted to play with him, but I had to make excuses, explaining that Tommy was weary. Meanwhile, Sarah continues to write me these long, theatrical notes. She messaged me yesterday, stating she felt betrayed by our family. I don't see how someone who was unfaithful might feel betrayed, yet she still appears unable to accept responsibility for her actions. It's always someone else's fault, mine, James's, Todd's, and never hers. James believes we should step in and assist Tommy, especially because he and Nathan are so close. However, he is also concerned about the ramifications of being too involved in Sarah's situation. We've been trying to strike a delicate balance between supporting the children and maintaining our personal tranquility, but it's been more difficult than we expected. Todd has begun to contact James, further complicating the situation. He's been trying to figure out what happened and wanted to chat about it. James reluctantly agreed to meet him for coffee. When he returned, he appeared more conflicted than ever. Todd is naturally devastated. He told James that he feels like his entire life has been a lie, and he is now trying to figure out how to co-parent with Sarah after everything that has occurred. Talking with Todd simply made James feel more torn. Todd is a kind man, who is only trying to do his best for his children, despite his awful situation. After hearing Todd's point of view, James feels even more divided about how to proceed. He wants to help, but we both know that getting too involved will drag us deeper into Sarah's chaos. It's difficult to determine what the appropriate decision is. Every time I see Tommy, I have an intense desire to help him. He's simply a child caught up in this mess, and he doesn't deserve it. Nathan continues asking why Tommy always appears so sad, and it kills my heart that I can't give him an honest reason. The more I think about it, the more divided I am between wanting to intervene and being terrified of being drawn into Sarah's tumultuous world. At the end of the day, all I want is to safeguard the kids. Tommy and Nathan deserve more, and it hurts to see them suffer as a result of their parents' sins. I don't know what the future holds, but I'm hoping we can find a way to resolve this without causing further harm. I'll keep you updated on what occurs, and once again, thank you for your ongoing support. Update 2. A lot has transpired in the last several days, so brace yourself. It's been a lot for all of us, and I'm not sure how much more I can take. First and foremost, Sarah chose to proceed with an official medical paternity test. She was dissatisfied with the results of the home DNA kit, arguing it was not a reputable source for making such a critical decision. To be fair, home tests have a margin of error, and I suppose she was hanging on to what little hope she had left. However, the results did not change. The medical paternity test verified the previous one's results. Todd is not Tommy's or his daughter's father. Sarah simply dug herself an even deeper hole. I was not surprised by the conclusion, but there was no space for uncertainty. Todd, in particular, appeared to be bracing himself for the worst, yet when the medical results arrived, I could tell he was still devastated. He appeared crushed, as if the last fiber of hope he'd been holding on to had been wrenched away. He had previously told James that he didn't expect any miracles, but there was always a small part of him that hoped the test was incorrect. Todd became more withdrawn after receiving the news. Todd apparently began researching after obtaining the results and tracked down the individual with whom Sarah was allegedly having an affair. Todd told James that this man was Sarah's coworker. He had suspected their relationship for a long time, but Sarah always dismissed it, claiming it was only work-related. Todd now understood everything. He remembered Sarah and this man being abnormally close, attending work parties together and messaging late into the night. She was continuously making explanations, assuring Todd that it was something innocent. But suddenly it seemed that all of our suspicions were being confirmed. Todd decided to face him. He traced him down to his residence and entered without alerting anyone. Todd, according to what I learned later, was not in a healthy mental state. He was upset, angry, and searching for answers. Things suddenly got out of control. The man initially disputed everything, but Todd refused to accept it. It quickly escalated into a shouting confrontation, and it wasn't long before it became physical. Neighbors heard the disturbance and phoned the cops. By the time authorities arrived, Todd and the man had been bruised. Todd was arrested for assault and now faces prosecution. It's a mess. James had to travel to the police station to assist Todd. He posted bond, but Todd is now facing major legal issues. He claims that the fight was provoked, but this will be difficult to prove in court. This whole thing is spiraling out of hand, and I can't help but believe it's all because of Sarah's decision to keep the truth hidden for so long. Todd is breaking down, and it's heartbreaking to witness someone who was always so collected break down like this. Meanwhile, Sarah is urgently trying to contain the damage, but it is far too late. Todd has petitioned for full custody of the children. Sarah is in a panic. She's trying to persuade everyone that Todd is the problem, referring to him as a psychopath and citing the fight as proof of his instability and danger. She's frightened Todd will take the kids away, and she's lashing out at everybody who doesn't support her. Todd has been talking of moving to another state with the kids to put some distance between them and Sarah. He believes the children deserve a fresh start away from the mayhem. But I am not sure. I appreciate his desire to protect kids, but separating them from everything they know could be more harmful than beneficial. Legally, it will be a difficult battle. When I last saw Sarah, she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were red and swollen, and she kept saying that everything was coming apart, that everyone was attempting to take her children away. It seemed as if she were experiencing a panic attack. Even so, she continues to regard herself as the victim in all of this. At this point, I believe we have no choice but to become involved. We're already caught up in this mess, whether we like it or not. James believes we should back Todd and assist him with the legal issues he is experiencing, especially since Todd appears to be the more stable father in all of this, which I think is a great idea. I'll keep you posted as things go, but for the time being, we're simply holding on and hoping for a resolution that doesn't absolutely wreck these children's lives. Update 3. I have a lot to say regarding all that has transpired since my last post. First, let's discuss Todd and the man Sarah had an affair with. You already know how Todd was detained after the confrontation became physical. Initially, we believed Todd might face significant assault charges, but the man opted not to press charges. Todd told us that this man wants to disassociate himself from the entire affair. He undoubtedly realized that getting engaged may make matters worse for him, both personally and professionally. Although this individual admitted to the affair when the police arrived, he has since severed relations with both Todd and Sarah. In some ways, that chapter of the story has come to an end, which I believe is for the best. Todd does not need to continue battling with someone who clearly has no regard for the consequences of his actions. Many people have questioned me about Tommy's sister and why I haven't said more about her. She's like Nathan, she's been informed what's going on but doesn't completely comprehend it. Outwardly, she does not appear to be as impacted. Deep down, I believe she is mourning in her own way, but she has not voiced it as much as Tommy has. Tommy is older and more mature, so he understands what's going on, and it appears to be hitting him harder. That's why I've focused more on him, even though both children are plainly victims of their mother's behavior. James and I are here to support both of them, regardless of who their parents are. Tommy's situation has deteriorated significantly. Some students at his school have started bullying him, which has resulted in fights. It doesn't help that Sarah is flooding his mind with beliefs that everything is his father's fault. Tommy knows his mother cheated on Todd and that Todd is not his real father. Despite this, Sarah has told him she did it because Todd was mean to her. This demonstrates that she would sooner ruin and divide her family than fight for it. That is, in my opinion, an awful thing to say. Todd, thus far, has fought for his children. All he wants is to get away from Sarah, which anyone can understand given how manipulative, devious, and unfaithful she is. I don't understand how the person who caused so much pain and turmoil can portray herself as a victim while continuing to damage the lives of others. But I suppose it's in her nature. She did what she did because she is a horrible person who would continue to act this way to the end, hoping to gain something from it all to make herself feel better. This is yet another reason why James and I believe a child should not grow up with an unfaithful parent. It is the worst possible model and influence for proper upbringing. We hope Todd gets complete custody because if Tommy continues to be affected by his mother, things will not go well for him. His younger sister will suffer considerably more because she is still young and does not completely comprehend what is going on. Over time, Sarah is likely to manipulate her and turn her against Todd. There's also a potential she'll end up acting like Sarah, believing her actions weren't that horrible and blaming others. At this time, both James and I are completely on Todd's side, and the children's as well. First, Todd truly wants to be a good father to them, but we also believe that neither Sarah nor the original father is what the children need. Their best hope right now is with Todd, and we'll help all three of them in any way we can. Even the whole of James' family, including my in-laws, is on Todd's side. Sarah's parents are not pleased with what she has done. For example, the other day, we chose not to attend a family gathering. On the one hand, we had another commitment, but we also wanted to escape the turmoil surrounding Sarah, and it was hard to watch Nathan go through everything Tommy is going through. At the occasion, Sarah began with her customary monologue, attempting to portray Todd as the story's villain. But my father-in-law intervened and told her to stop because she was only inflicting more harm and sorrow to everyone. He pointed at Tommy, who was sitting across the room, and asked, "Don't you understand the consequences of your mistakes? Don't you see how you're still hurting everyone? Your children, and we, do not deserve this. Accept your mistakes and behave maturely." My mother-in-law then went on to say that she had not trained her to act this way and hoped her granddaughter would not follow in her footsteps. Sarah threatened to leave the event with the children, but no one in the family supported her decision. My father-in-law said she could leave if she wished, but the grandchildren would stay. He told her that both kids needed to stay away from the commotion she had started and was still causing around her, and that he would bring them back later. Sarah left, and the children stayed to play. Later, my father-in-law called Todd to invite him to spend the day with them, and he didn't hesitate. My father-in-law reported the kids seemed considerably better, but it wasn't a miracle cure. Still, being separated from their mother is the greatest thing for them right now because her poison is hurting them, something no one in the family wants, except, obviously, Sarah. Sarah doesn't appear to care about her children, only about how she is seen and not losing anything. A true mother would not use these games to harm her children. Instead, she would endeavor to protect them from everything. However, a mother would not have cheated on her spouse. Still, here we are. Update 4. With the newest developments involving my sister-in-law and her children, better times are on the horizon for this family. To begin, my sister-in-law discovered Todd had been invited to my in-laws' house after she had departed, and she was not pleased. She went to my in-laws' house and challenged them because she believes they should be on her side rather than Todd's. My in-laws stated that they would always side with the children in this case, and that if Todd was beneficial to them, they would support him. This, in some ways, fueled Sarah's rage. After shouting, she grabbed an item from the front garden and flung it at her parents' car window. To summarize, it's a distinct issue. My father-in-law sued her, and she had to pay for the window. I mention this because it is relevant to the custody case later on. Todd's divorce went fairly smoothly. There was ample evidence that Sarah had been unfaithful, therefore Todd came out top in the divorce. However, no one really wins in a divorce, especially one prompted by infidelity. At the very least, Sarah could not take any more from Todd than she already had. I wouldn't say it was easy to obtain full custody of the children. Quite the reverse. But I'll tell you what happened. Todd won. It wasn't simple because Todd is not the children's biological father. He did, however, succeed after months of judicial proceedings. Some family members, including James and my in-laws, testified to Sarah's character. The car window incident did not help her case, nor did the fact that the judge was willing to contemplate handing complete custody to the father rather than the mother, which is unusual. The final nail in the coffin was the biological father's actions. This father simply showed up for selfish reasons. To avoid paying Sarah's child support if she had custody of the children. Sarah no longer has custody, so she has no grounds to sue him because she has no child-related expenses. I'm not sure Todd can demand anything from his biological father, but he hasn't indicated to us he intends to. According to my understanding, the biological father formally gave up his parental rights, as if it were an adoption. I'd like to add that I haven't followed every aspect of the case, so this is only my basic idea. The crucial issue here is that Todd has custody of both children. This has already begun to have results, particularly for Tommy and his sister, who have started therapy. Sarah can see her children, but only with supervision. My in-laws, on the other hand, can see the kids anytime they want, as long as Todd makes the decision, and so can we. This has also benefited Nathan, who is now able to play with Tommy as previously. There is still much work to be done, but things are gradually returning to normal, which is all that matters. I'm not sure what to tell you about Sarah. I haven't had much communication with her in a while. I blocked her and haven't heard anything from her since. She sends sporadic messages to her parents and James, but their relationship is pretty icy right now, and I'm not sure if it will ever change. My wife forgot our anniversary, so I didn't pick her up at the airport. Am I the asshole for not forgiving her despite her later apology? My wife forgot our anniversary, so I decided not to pick her up at the airport. I am a 23-year-old male married to Sarah, 25. We've been together for 5 years, and I'm reaching a breaking point. Let me set the stage. It's our 5th wedding anniversary. You'd think that after 5 years of marriage, some recognition of the milestone would be expected, right? I had been dropping hints for weeks, saying things like, I can't believe we've been married for 5 years, or, do you think we'll do anything special for our anniversary this year? She responded distractedly, as I expected given her hectic schedule. Then the day arrived, and everything went as usual. She didn't say anything. There were no flowers, no meal, and no mention of our anniversary. I mean, I had gone all out every year before, organizing surprise dinners, writing meaningful messages, and sending thoughtful gifts. But over the past few years, it seemed like I was the only one making an attempt. So I brought it up. I said something like, hey, I suppose we aren't celebrating today? She just laughed it off, saying, oh, we'll do something later. Don't worry. But later never arrived. The day went without her realizing it. I felt hurt and irritated. I've put so much into this marriage, and now here I am, feeling forgotten on our anniversary. Then things began to spiral. She had a business trip arranged for the same week, departing on the 14th and returning the following evening. She asked me to bring her up from the airport, as usual. At first, I hesitated. I had been giving passive-aggressive indications about my feelings, but she didn't appear to notice. Instead, she kept making jokes about how weary she was from the trip and how excited she was to be home, without mentioning the anniversary. It was all about work, and everything seemed okay. Frustration built up. I had been doing all the emotional work, making every special occasion memorable, while she was constantly distracted or preoccupied. That night, after lying awake for several hours, I made a decision. I was not going to pick her up at the airport. I wasn't about to reward her contempt for me. Maybe if I stopped being so accommodating, she'd realize how much she took me for granted. I did not text her, call her, or do anything. When she gave me the normal message with her flight information, time, gate, and ETA, I didn't answer. I did not even acknowledge it. It felt empowering to simply not care, even if only for a moment. I spent the day doing my own thing, treating myself as I deserved, with no regard for Sarah's flight or her return. Around 8 p.m., I began receiving texts from her, one after the other. She started phoning over and over. I simply ignored it. A part of me felt bad, but the majority of me felt strangely satisfied. Sarah was stranded at the airport with no one to pick her up, and I wasn't going to be the dutiful husband anymore. She could figure things out. Finally, about an hour later, after ignoring her calls for what seemed like an eternity, I texted her. "Oh, sorry. I completely forgot you needed a ride. This happens from time to time. I confess it was a touch petty, and I'm not proud of it. But, after 5 years of always putting her needs first, I finally broke." The remarks were almost too sweet, full of irony. I knew it would enrage her, and that's exactly what occurred. The next text I received was a series of heated rants, calling me selfish and reckless. She went on about how I was overreacting and being childish. I didn't care. The following several hours were a haze. She eventually found her way home, and as she came through the door, there was a chill in the air. She scarcely acknowledged me. She was still angry and sulking, and I didn't care anymore. I went to bed early that night and left her to her thoughts. The following day was no better. Sarah did not even apologize. She made the same old excuse about work being stressful, claiming she had just lost track of things. But I wouldn't have it. I wasn't going to let her brush everything under the rug anymore. I wanted her to admit she had messed up. I wanted her to understand what she'd done. As the days passed, I couldn't shake the sense that nothing would change. So I let her be angry. And me? I felt an odd combination of remorse and delight. I have no idea where this will lead, but I know I can't go back to the way things were. Something has to give. Update number 1. After I texted Sarah about forgetting to take her up, I didn't hear from her for a while. But, oh, when I did, it was not pretty. She started texting and calling repeatedly. I ignored each one. Part of me wanted to just let her stew, but I kept my phone on silent, and hours passed. I wasn't going to rush to pick up the pieces because she was the one who had ignored me for so long. It wasn't until after 10 p.m., I eventually surrendered and checked my phone. I had missed perhaps 15 calls and at least 20 texts. Most of them consisted of her calling me petty, reckless, and juvenile. She was infuriated. The most memorable text was one that read, "You really had to leave me stranded? Is this how you treat me after all I've done for you?" I wasn't going to fall into that guilt trip. Instead, I said quietly, "Maybe now you know what it feels like to be forgotten." I didn't say anything else. I knew any additional explanation would be lost on her. Sarah attempted to defend herself as best she could. Her response was classic. "I apologize, okay? But I've been occupied with work. I did not mean to forget the anniversary. You know how hectic things have been recently." It was the usual excuse she had always used. Job stress. But this time, it wasn't going to work. I did not respond right away. I just let the silence linger between us. After a while, she got the hint. It wasn't until the next morning that I realized how deeply she'd been affected by the entire affair. Sarah waited at the airport for more than 3 hours. Apparently, she tried to phone me every half hour throughout that time. She couldn't catch a cab soon away because she didn't want to spend money on it. She eventually gave up and hired a cab, but by the time she arrived home, it was already past midnight. When she came through the door, I didn't welcome her or make small conversation. She did not even look at me. She simply went past me, dropping her suitcase on the floor. It was obvious that she was still irritated. The tension in the room was thick enough to cut with a knife. She tried to talk, but it was more of a monologue about how unfair I was. "I worked hard, and this is how you treated me?" she inquired, her voice filled with frustration. But the excuses were no longer effective for me. I wasn't interested in hearing about how difficult her job was when I felt like I'd been carrying this relationship alone for months. The first night back was horrible. We did not converse much. The only time she looked at me was while I was preparing for bed. I could feel her stare at me, but I couldn't bring myself to say anything. I was not going to make the first move. The next day, Sarah tried to make things right by texting me and stating, "I've been working so hard lately, it simply slipped my mind." You know how it goes. Same old narrative, same lame excuse. At this point, it was clear she didn't get it. We scarcely communicated for the following 2 days. Every time we did it, she seemed to be walking on eggshells. She was passive-aggressive, and I was not about to back down either. I had made my point, and I was not going to let her convince me that everything was all right just because she offered a few meaningless apologies. It didn't help that her father became involved. He called to ask why Sarah had to take a cab home. He was concerned, of course, but it seemed like he was trying to guilt-trip me. "I can't believe you left her there," he said. "She's been working so hard, and you just let her figure it out on her own." I had no idea how to answer, so I didn't. I let the call finish and walked away. Later that evening, Sarah made an effort to apologize, but it was not real. It felt forced, as if she was saying sorry simply to relieve the tension. "I guess I could have done better, but you didn't have to leave me stranded," she replied. There was no true accountability, no understanding of why I was furious in the first place, only another deflection. I wasn't going to accept a half-hearted apology. I told her, "I'll get past this if you can acknowledge how I feel and start being more considerate. It's not only about the anniversary. It's about how you treat me overall." How did she respond? She accused me of overreacting. She claimed I was overreacting to the situation, but I refused to back down. After a few more days of stillness and tension, I decided to establish some boundaries. I wanted space to focus on myself, so I resumed my own activities. It was a comfort not to have to continuously attend to her moods. Sarah wasn't delighted with this, but she made one more effort to make things right. She made a dinner reservation for the two of us, stating it was to compensate for something. I wasn't sure if she truly believed it would heal things or if it was a last-ditch effort to escape true responsibilities. Regardless, I wasn't sure if it was enough. I was still waiting to see if she was truly going to change. Is this a serious attempt, or just another temporary fix that will come apart in a few weeks? Update number 2. Following the airport incident, Sarah determined to attempt to set things right. She made a dinner reservation at a restaurant, claiming it was to make amends for everything that had occurred. I won't lie. Part of me was cautiously optimistic. Maybe this was the moment she realized how much she had hurt me and decided to make an effort. But, as usual, this was not the case. Sarah texted me at midday on the day of the dinner to inform me that the reservation had been made for 7 p.m. I didn't sense any enthusiasm, I was simply going through the motions. Perhaps it was the fact that this wasn't our first attempt to settle things, or it was the nagging feeling in my gut that this supper would make no difference. Still, I got ready and decided to give it a shot. At least for one night, everything might be different. We got at the restaurant, and to my surprise, it wasn't as nice and private as I had imagined. Instead, it was a basic chain restaurant, the kind you go to for casual evenings when you don't want to put in too much effort. It wasn't even a place I enjoyed. I'd previously stated that I didn't like such types of places, but Sarah had chosen them regardless. I tried not to let it affect me, but it was difficult to ignore the lack of effort. It felt like she had chosen the easiest option, as if she couldn't be bothered to think about what I would want. The conversation began awkwardly. Sarah immediately began discussing how hard her job had been, going on and on about deadlines, meetings, and the amount of strain she was under. She didn't even recognize that she had missed our anniversary or left me stranded in the airport. Instead, she simply kept chatting about work. She said something about doing her best and being stressed out, but I couldn't help but think she was entirely missing the point. She had not apologized for the anniversary. She had not apologized for making me feel totally invisible. The more she discussed work, the more frustrated I felt. It wasn't simply that she was disregarding the larger issue. She didn't appear to comprehend how deeply her actions had hurt me. And it struck me harder than ever. In that moment, I recognized that this was not an isolated incident. This was a pattern. We were sitting there trying to have a great supper, but all I could think about was how disconnected she was from what was truly important. She didn't seem to get why I was wounded. It wasn't only about the anniversary. It was not only about the airport. It was about all the tiny things she had overlooked over the years, like the birthday surprises I arranged alone. She was too busy during the holidays, so we spent them apart. Our small conversation didn't last long, and things began to unravel. We had a minor quarrel about the food, but as often, it escalated into something more. She became defensive, arguing that I was being very picky and ungrateful. I attempted to clarify that it was not about the meal or the restaurant, but about everything else. That's when everything started to spill out. I told her how I felt ignored, and how she never seemed to put any effort into our relationship. I mentioned the anniversaries, birthdays, and quiet nights where I felt like a supporting figure in her life. Sarah, however, deflected rather than accepting responsibility. She began talking about how nobody's perfect, and how I should simply accept what I had. And there it was, the excuse I'd grown tired of hearing. Nobody's perfect. It was the mantra she usually said when things got tough, and this time was no exception. When the waiter came by to see if we needed anything else, I simply stared at Sarah. Her countenance was blank, and it was evident she was no longer listening. She made a token effort, offering me a small box of chocolates with a half-hearted smile. "Here," she answered. "This is for you. Sorry for everything. It was a lovely gesture, I suppose, but it felt insincere. A last-ditch effort to make things right without actually addressing the larger issues between us." I did not even want the chocolates. I was past the point of making little gestures. I needed something authentic. The remainder of the dinner was quiet, unpleasant, and full of meaningless platitudes. We scarcely chatted on the way home. I felt the strain in the car. Sarah was still unhappy, but I couldn't tell if she was upset with me for calling her out or with herself for not understanding why I was upset in the first place. It did not matter. Regardless, the silence was deafening. When we returned home, I couldn't shake the impression that nothing had changed. I thought that this time she'd understand. That it wasn't about the little things, but about the broader picture. But my hopes were dashed when I looked at her and realized she still didn't see it. Sarah began completing minor household chores over the next 3 days. She washed the dishes, helped with the laundry, and cleaned up. At first, I assumed this was a sign that she was attempting to change. However, it felt more like damage control than anything else. She wasn't doing these things because she truly wanted to. She was doing them because she knew I was furious and wanted to avoid a confrontation. I noticed myself emotionally distancing more and more. I couldn't help it. I did not want to keep being disappointed. I didn't want to keep waiting for her to change when it appeared she wasn't trying. I didn't want to fix someone who refused to meet me halfway. A friend of mine advised I provide Sarah an ultimatum. "Either she changes, or you walk away," he replied. It seems harsh, but perhaps it was the wake-up call she needed. I couldn't keep on like this, always wondering if she was going to make a genuine effort. Sarah's excuses piled up over time: work stress, deadlines. They were always her explanations for everything. I was beginning to notice a larger problem. Sarah didn't seem to realize the developing emotional distance between us. She assumed that performing the bare minimum would suffice, but I realized that wasn't the case anymore. I began to ponder about our future together. Was this relationship salvageable? I had no idea anymore. Update 3. After weeks of dealing with the same cycle, empty apologies, half-hearted attempts at change, and more excuses, I had reached my breaking point. I could not go on like this any longer. I had tried to be patient and give her opportunities to step up, but it was evident that Sarah didn't grasp it. So I decided to sit down with her and have the chat we should have had months ago. It was not easy. I'd been putting it off, hoping she'd figure it out on her own, but that wasn't happening. When she returned home from work one evening, I informed her that we needed to discuss. There was no way around this one. We sat in the living room, and I could immediately feel the tension rising. I didn't want to yell, but I couldn't hide my feelings any longer. I began by telling Sarah, "I can't do this anymore. This relationship has been one-sided for far too long. You've disregarded me, forgotten critical events, and never accepted responsibility for any of it." She only glanced at me, bewildered. "What are you talking about?" she asked. "I've been working so hard, and you're acting like I'm doing nothing." I took a deep breath and tried to remain cool. "It is not about your work, Sarah. It's about how you treated me. The anniversary. The airport incident. I've tried to make this relationship work for both of us, but you haven't even attempted to meet me halfway." Sarah instantly went on the defensive, as she usually does. "You're blowing things out of proportion," she continued, her voice rising. "You're acting like I forgot your anniversary on purpose. I didn't mean to forget, okay? I've been stressed out with work." Sarah responded with defiance. I was not buying it. "It isn't only the anniversary, Sarah. It is everything. It's every time you make me feel unimportant. Every birthday and holiday passes, and I'm the only one who makes an attempt." Sarah's face stiffened. "I am not perfect, okay? Nobody is perfect. Maybe you're just too demanding. I do what I can." She placed the responsibility back on me. Perhaps you expect too much of me. Her statement made me even enraged. I am not looking for perfection, Sarah. I am asking for basic consideration. I am seeking for respect. I'm asking you to care about our relationship in the same way that I do. But you don't, and that's what really hurts. The room fell silent for a minute. I could see Sarah wasn't expecting this type of discourse. She squirmed uneasily in her seat, obviously unsure how to answer. I guess I could have done better, she said, but it was clear she didn't truly believe it. She didn't really accept responsibility for anything. She wasn't even apologetic. She was simply stating what she needed to say. I'm not interested in hearing you say you could have done better, I stated calmly. I need more than that. I need to know you understand it. I need to know you understand how much your negligence has harmed me, and I need you to demonstrate that you are prepared to make an attempt. Sarah avoided staring at me. I could tell she was uncomfortable, but I was not done. I had one final point to make. How would you feel if the roles were reversed, Sarah? How would you feel if I forgot about our anniversary and left you at the airport? For the first time in the conversation, she was silent. Her mouth opened, but no words emerged. I could see the wheels moving in her thoughts, and for a brief time, it appeared that the truth had finally been accepted. She didn't say anything for quite some time, and I let the stillness hang in the air. Finally, Sarah broke the pause with a low, I'm not sure. I suppose I'd be pissed. I nodded. Exactly. That is how I feel. That is how I have felt for a long time. I proposed something simple. Couples activities such as frequent date nights or simply spending time together to restore the connection we once had. I wanted to see if she was truly willing to put up the effort to alter things. We can try it, but it will require work from both of us. I can't keep carrying this relationship by myself, I admitted. Sarah stared at me and hesitated for a second. Okay, I'll try, she answered, but her tone was flat, as if she was simply repeating what she thought I wanted to hear. I'm not sure whether date nights will solve anything, but I'll try. That was the lackluster response I expected. It felt more like a responsibility than a commitment. I knew I had to wait a few weeks to see whether anything would change. I couldn't simply accept her word for it. The conversation concluded on a tense note. Sarah did not appear convinced, and neither did I. We went to bed without saying anything more, both of us lost in our own thoughts. I kept wondering if Sarah's statements were sincere or if she was just saying anything to get me off her back. I chose to give it time, but I knew I couldn't wait forever. I had already invested so much in this relationship, and I wasn't sure how much more I could offer if nothing changed. I couldn't let myself become trapped in a cycle of disappointment and broken promises. So now I'm simply waiting to see if Sarah will make an attempt or if she'll revert to her old habits. I'm not sure what will happen, but I do know one thing. I'm not going to stick around for another false promise. Update 4. After that serious chat, things appeared to take a turn, for a time. Sarah tried harder. She actually organized a small date night for us, which included dinner at a local restaurant we both enjoyed. Nothing extravagant, but it did feel like an effort. She also began to assist around the house more, cleaning dishes without being asked, bringing out the garbage, and picking up groceries. Things appeared to be improving for about a week. I even began to wonder whether she was finally getting it. Maybe I was wrong about her. But during the second week, things began to return to normal. Sarah canceled a planned outing, claiming that work had piled up and she couldn't get away. Again, work stress was her go-to excuse. I tried to be understanding, but it was difficult not to perceive it as yet another meaningless excuse. I was frustrated. I had hoped that her efforts in the first week were meaningful, but they suddenly felt like a temporary fix. Something she did only to keep me quiet. The saddest thing was when Sarah forgot another milestone. She didn't recall the day we first met. It wasn't something big, just a minor detail that mattered to me. I mentioned it lightly, but she just shrugged it off as if it were no great deal. In that instant, I knew she was no longer trying to keep track of these things. She didn't care about the small things that used to matter to both of us. It was only me, attempting to hang on to whatever spark we had left, while she appeared to be losing interest. I began doubting everything. Did Sarah genuinely care about our marriage, or did she simply assume that I would always be there? She didn't appear to realize how much effort I was putting in, which hurt more than I'd want to admit. I wasn't sure if she still respected me or just took me for granted. One day, while cleaning up the living room, I discovered something that made my blood run cold. I found Sarah's calendar stashed beneath some papers on her desk. I don't typically rummage through her belongings, but something told me to look. I noticed the date of our anniversary marked on the calendar. But here's the thing, she still forgot it. It was as if she had prepared for it, made a note of it, but then forgot about it when it finally arrived. I was quite frustrated. Later that night, I confronted her, wondering why she had marked our anniversary yet still forgot about it. She made some poor excuse about forgetting to check her calendar that week. That is what she said, as if it were an innocent mistake. It was not a mistake. It was plain negligence. When I looked at the calendar more thoroughly, I realized what had actually been prioritized. There were work obligations, sporting events, and weekend vacations with pals, but almost nothing about us. Our relationship seemed to have slipped under her notice. I had understood that work was always her top priority, but seeing it set out like that stung me harder than intended. I had tried so hard to keep things going between us, but it seemed like she couldn't be bothered. The final straw arrived a few days later. I overheard Sarah on the phone with a friend, discussing a weekend trip they were arranging for a sporting event. She was ecstatic about it, discussing the trip's specifics as if it were the greatest thing ever. I felt terrible to my stomach. This was something she had not revealed to me. She had time for a weekend excursion with her pals, but she couldn't remember even the smallest details about me. I tried to dismiss it at first, but the more I considered it, the more betrayed I felt. It wasn't simply that she prioritized her hobbies. She never thought about how I'd feel. She had plenty of time and energy for everything else, but when it came to us, I felt like an afterthought. So I stopped engaging. I stopped making an attempt. I stopped texting her throughout the day and trying to make small chat when she arrived home. I felt if she didn't notice the distance between us, she probably never would. I needed her to see what was going on. I needed her to feel how I was feeling. Eventually, our pals noticed. They were initially all on Sarah's side, claiming that I was overreacting. But eventually, they noticed it as well. Several friends contacted me, stating they understood my unhappiness and even confessed Sarah had been selfish. They told me I deserved better, and I understood I wasn't alone in seeing the reality. But nothing changed. The final blow came when Sarah canceled our scheduled dinner date to attend a last-minute gathering with her pals. She didn't even tell me in person. She sent me an apology, stating she couldn't refuse the invitation. That was it. That was when I understood I needed to make a decision. This was something I couldn't keep putting off. Sarah wouldn't change unless I forced her to. I could wait for her to figure it out, but at what cost? The longer I stayed, the more I felt like I had lost myself. I needed to stop waiting for a relationship that was unsatisfactory. Now I'm at a crossroads. I'm not sure if I have the strength to walk away, but I can't keep continuing like this. The emotional barrier has grown so far that I'm not sure how to bridge it anymore. Something needs to give. It's time for me to make a difficult decision about my marriage, one that will either force her to wake up or allow me the space I require to move on. Update 5. After everything that had happened, I felt it was time to take a step back and consider what I really wanted. I needed to decide if I wanted to keep trying in this relationship or if it was time to walk away for forever. So I chose to spend the entire weekend alone. I did not respond to Sarah's SMS or calls. I didn't even leave the house often. I needed room to think, and this time I wasn't going to allow my emotions influence my decision. During that weekend, I finally realized the reality. I had been settling for less than I deserved for quite some time. I recognized how emotionally spent I had gotten by clinging to something that no longer existed. The small things I did for Sarah, the gestures, the effort, all seemed to go unappreciated. She wasn't making an effort to make me feel respected. She was not even trying. And the worst part? Sarah didn't seem to notice anything wrong. She simply went about her normal routine, figuring everything was great. That understanding ached. I spent the entire weekend reflecting on how much I gave to this relationship and how little I received in return. I was no longer upset about the anniversary or the airport event. I was concerned about the big picture. Sarah had never really cared about putting me first. She had never seen me as a priority. When I came out of my weekend of reflection, I realized I couldn't keep pretending everything was fine. I was emotionally weary, and if I stayed in this relationship, I would only continue to be harmed. So I arranged one last conversation with Sarah. This was it. I was going to lay it all out and set clear boundaries for what I needed if this relationship was going to survive. I decided to wait until the following weekend to have the chat. Sarah was going to be home, and I knew it was our last chance to actually talk. I was prepared to be direct. To tell her everything I had been keeping hidden for so long. When the time arrived, I sat with Sarah in the living room. She could see something was wrong, but I don't think she expected what happened. I began by telling her that I couldn't continue in a relationship in which I felt underappreciated. I've tried to connect with you, I explained, but nothing has changed. You're always too busy, and I'm constantly making excuses for you. I can't do it anymore. Sarah appeared shocked. She couldn't believe what I was saying. She continued asking, "Why didn't you tell me earlier? I didn't realize things were so horrible." It was as if she was taken aback by anything I said, but I found it difficult to feel sorry for her. How could she not have realized it? How could she not notice the impact her negligence was having on me? She instantly transferred the blame back onto me, saying, "You should have told me how you felt. I didn't realize things were this horrible. I thought everything was fine," she explained. She made it appear as if it was my fault for not being more outspoken about how miserable I was. That's when I realized she was completely out of touch with the state of our relationship. "I've tried, Sarah," I answered, trying to remain cool. "I've tried to connect with you multiple times, but you never listen. You do not take my problems seriously, and I have been left feeling alone. I can't continue doing this." Sarah did not take it well. She asked me for another opportunity. "I will change, I swear. I will put forth more effort. I will prioritize you. Please don't leave me." Her voice was imploring now, and her eyes were filled with desperation. For a brief moment, I considered backing down, but I knew I couldn't just let her keep making bogus promises. She had been doing so for years. "I'm willing to give it one last try," I told you. "But this time, things have to be different. I need you to actually show me that you can change. No more excuses. No more empty apologies." Sarah agreed, but I was not convinced. Her words were only that, words. Actions spoke louder, and I wanted to see if she would follow through on anything she said. We discussed specific things she could do to make time for us, organize more thoughtful dates, and be present while we were together. It was a modest list, but it was the beginning. The following few days saw a variety of tiny but obvious changes. Sarah began planning dates again. They weren't lavish, but they were thoughtful, and she was obviously trying. She began to be more present at home, taking the time to talk to me rather than disappearing into her phone or watching TV. It felt like a start in the right direction, but a part of me didn't believe it would endure. Several days later, Sarah surprised me with a handwritten note. She apologized for everything, realized how much I had been carrying in the relationship, and stated her commitment to making significant changes. I was shocked. This was the first time she had truly accepted responsibility for her acts, and it meant a lot to me. It was a step forward, but I was still unsure whether it would be sufficient. I began to sense a glimmer of hope, but I maintained my hard boundaries. I wasn't going to let myself slip into the same habits. I needed to see actual, long-lasting progress. For the first time in a long time, I felt hopeful that things would improve. But I wasn't going to base my happiness only on Sarah. That was how much I had learned. So, for now, I'm cautiously optimistic. I'm not sure what the future holds, but I know I can control my own happiness. Whatever happens to her, if things go better, that's terrific. But if they don't, I will be prepared to walk away. The decision is now in my hands. I saved my dad's company, making it a $150 million empire, while my playboy brother was still favored. He humiliated me and took the CEO role, firing me. This story is titled "My Deadbeat Brother Spent Years Partying While I Turned Dad's Failing Company into a $150 million Empire." He fired and humiliated me during the shareholders meeting. I left quietly. Hello everyone. Before we begin, a small favor. If you love this type of work, please subscribe. It's free, helps the channel, and ensures you never miss out on great videos. Okay, let's get started. Hey Reddit, have you ever had one of those moments when you feel like everything in your life is hanging by a thread? That was where I was 10 years ago, staring at a mess I hadn't made but couldn't ignore. Let me backtrack a little. My father created this corporation from nothing. He was good at what he did, but what about money? Not very much. By the time I was 26, just out of business school, the company was losing money. My father looked 10 years older than he was, buried in tension. And what about my older brother Adam? He was not helping. Adam was 31 at the time. While I was working hard to understand supply networks and financial models, he was, let's just say, having a good time. He possessed an effortless charm that made him the favorite. Always have, always will. I knew that. It wasn't new, but it still stings. One night, I found my father sitting in his office, surrounded by mountains of unpaid invoices and contracts that were never going to be fulfilled. He didn't even notice me walking in. His desk looked like a catastrophe zone, and he didn't appear to have slept for weeks. When he finally recognized me, he remarked, "I believe it is over, son. I'm not sure how to fix this." That hit me more than I expected. I'm not sure if it was the weight of his words or the reality that everything he had worked for could crumble, but something inside me clicked. I promised him I will handle it. I'm not sure whether he believed me at the time, but he didn't argue. Honestly, I believe he was relieved that someone was stepping up. Since then, I have almost lived at the office. I understood every detail about how the corporation operated, or, more precisely, how it did not function. I became acquainted with the numbers, renegotiated contracts, and spoke with every client that passed through the door. Many of them did not want to hear from me. I was young and inexperienced, and they had already lost faith in us. I cannot tell you how many times I was told no or had doors shut in my face. But I kept showing up. People noticed that, you know? Even those who didn't like me initially began to take me seriously after a time. The first year was grueling. I was working at least 16 hours a day. My father was still officially in charge, but he delegated the majority of the decision-making authority. I drastically reduced unneeded spending. This includes some of Adam's more extravagant expenses. He had this habit of charging personal expenses to the company account, and no one ever stopped him. I halted it. He did not take it well. I recall him showing up at the office one day just to laugh at me. "Look at you playing CEO," he said. "Don't become too comfy. Dad will not let you take it." I ignored him as always. I knew how the game worked. Adam was the favorite. He was always given credit for things he didn't do, as well as the benefit of the doubt when he made mistakes. But I was not doing this for approval. I was doing it because I didn't want to waste my father's hard work. By the end of the year, things began to improve. We weren't prospering yet, but we also weren't drowning. Slowly, we began to rebuild our reputation. Clients returned, staff came to believe that their jobs were safe, and the company was genuinely profitable. It wasn't much, but it was something. However, success does not solve all problems. My father was proud of our development, but in his opinion, Adam could do no wrong. Adam was always proud of me, no matter what I accomplished. Even though Adam was rarely around, my father would discuss his economic acumen over family dinners. While everyone else was talking about vacations, I was calculating numbers and strategizing for expansion. It was not fair, but life rarely is. I decided early on that I didn't need the credit. If Adam chose to accept all of the acclaim, that was acceptable. I had larger aims in mind. My father's praise would have been good, but what mattered to me was creating the firm something to be proud of, something sustainable, something I could look back on and say, yes, I did that. The company underwent a transformation over the years. We began offering new services, created some unique technological solutions, and moved into markets we never imagined possible. Revenue progressively increased, from scraping by to reaching 8 figures, and then crossing into 9. It was weird to see something that was on the verge of collapse transform into an industry leader. I should have felt great, but there was always this underlying tension. Adam wasn't as absent anymore. As the company grew in success, he began to appear more frequently at the workplace, acting as if he were an essential part of the operation. Everyone knew better, but no one said anything, including Dad. Looking back, I believe that was the first hint that something was wrong. Adam disliked the fact that the spotlight was no longer totally focused on him. He'd joke about how I was too serious or needed a life outside of the job, but there was an edge to his remarks, as if he was preparing for something. I had no idea what it was, but I could feel it. Still, I kept my head down and concentrated on my work. I wasn't going to let his anxieties destroy all I'd worked so hard for. Or so I told myself. In actuality, I didn't believe he could cause much damage. I underestimated him. That was my first error. By the time we reached $150 million in revenue, the fractures were beginning to appear. I just hadn't realized how deep they were. I knew something was wrong the moment Dad called the shareholder meeting. It's not like he hadn't gathered us before, but this time felt different. The phrase he used, a significant announcement about the company's future, had a finality to it. I assumed it was about his retirement. After all, he had been talking about taking a step back for years, particularly after the company had steadied. I was not nervous. If anything, I was prepared. I'd been running the company without a title for years, and this meeting seemed like a formality to make it official. I wasn't seeking for a pat on the back, but I assumed this was a logical step. Who else might take over? Adam arrived late, of course. That was vintage Adam. I was already at the boardroom table, reviewing my notes for the presentation I'd prepared, when he walked in as if nothing mattered. He was always smiling, shaking hands, and cracking jokes. Everyone adored him. That's the issue with Adam. You almost forgot he'd never done anything to deserve the respect he received. He had a knack of making people feel like he belonged, even if he didn't. He threw me a wink as he sat down, which made my stomach turn. Not because I was afraid, Adam had never posed a genuine threat, but because it appeared premeditated. I brushed it off. It makes no sense to let my thoughts go wild before the conference even begins. Dad entered a few minutes later, looking exhausted but resolute. He began his normal spiel about the company's history, how important it was to him, and how proud he was of what we had accomplished. It was a little over the top, but that was Dad's style. He loved to set the tone before breaking the big news. When he finally came to the point, he stood up, fixed his glasses, and said, "It's time for me to pass the torch." He hesitated, gazing around the room, as if expecting for applause or something. After much consideration, I've decided that Adam will be the new CEO. I swear time paused for a second. My brain refused to process what I had just heard. Is Adam the CEO? Surely, this was a mistake. I looked at Adam and he was beaming from ear to ear, not surprised, not taken off guard, just grinning. That's when it struck me. He had known. He had known all along. I didn't have time to think about it because Dad continued going. "I believe Adam embodies the leadership qualities this company needs to move forward," he told me. Leadership qualities? The guy who was often late for meetings? The individual whose only contribution to the organization was depleting the entertainment fund for years? Before I could say anything, Adam stood up, clutching a folder. "I'd like to take a moment to address something important," he continued, his tone formal, which was amusing coming from him. He opened the folder and began flicking through the pages, making a huge out of it. "Over the past few months," he continued, "I've come across some troubling discrepancies in the way certain decisions have been made." He looked at me and then at the board members, as if he was trying to judge their reactions. "It appears that my brother has been operating outside his authority." I couldn't believe what I heard. He went on to accuse me of conducting unapproved deals, exceeding my authority, and compromising the company's name. He portrayed me as a reckless, power-hungry character who had ran amok while Dad was distracted. It was all very cleverly worded, just vague enough to sound reasonable without providing any actual evidence. I opened my lips to defend myself, but Dad interrupted me. "Let him finish," he responded, his tone calm but forceful. Adam concluded his brief presentation by saying, "I only bring this up because I care deeply about the company's future, and I want to ensure we maintain the highest level of integrity." Integrity, coming from Adam? The irony was almost too much to bear. When he was finished, the room fell silence. All eyes were on Dad, who took a big breath and announced, "After reviewing the situation, I've decided to terminate Marcus's employment, effective immediately." And my world came crumbling down. Security guards emerged out of nowhere, standing by the entrance, seemingly waiting for the signal to haul me out. I did not fight it. I did not even say anything. What was there to say? The decision had been decided long before the meeting, and I had fallen right into their trap. As I was gathering my belongings, Adam leaned over and muttered, just loud enough for me to hear, "Nothing personal, little brother. Just business." That was when I realized it wasn't all about the corporation. This was about him demonstrating something to me, Dad, and anybody who had ever compared us. He wasn't concerned about the company's future. He was concerned about taking it from me. I walked out of that boardroom with all the decorum I could summon, but inside I was seething. Not only was I caught off guard, but Adam had used years of hard effort against me. He had not only taken the job, but also the narrative. By the time I arrived to my car, my phone was already flooded with texts from coworkers, friends, and even a few board members who were taken aback by what had occurred. I disregarded them all. I needed to think. The drive home was a haze. I continued repeating the encounter in my thoughts, trying to figure out why I had missed the signs. Looking back, they were all there. Adam coming up at the workplace more frequently, Dad being abnormally secretive, and even some of the board members behaving distant recently. I'd been so preoccupied with operating the company that I hadn't noticed the storm developing right under my nose. When I arrived home, I sat in the dark for hours, trying to make sense of everything. How could Dad, the guy who had seen me devote my life to this enterprise, chose Adam? Was it loyalty? Blind favoritism? Or was I just so replaceable in his eyes? Whatever the cause, one thing was certain. I was out and Adam was in. But here's the thing about Adam. He's terrific at portraying the character, but he's lousy at recognizing the stakes. While he was busy celebrating his victory, he didn't realize I wasn't leaving empty-handed. Far from it. I had spent years establishing more than simply a business. I had created leverage. And while they were busy scheming my ruin, they didn't bother to investigate how deep my roots were. That night, I reached a choice. I was not going to fight Adam directly. That's what he expected and wanted, a chance to portray me as bitter and spiteful. No, I planned to do something much smarter. I was going to wait. And when the time came, I was going to remind them all of who started this empire in the first place. The first thing I did was contact a few important employees who had been with the company through thick and thin. These were not spectacular, high-profile individuals. Rather, they served as the company's backbone. The IT staff, a few senior developers, and 2 managers who had worked with me during those difficult early years. I knew they'd answer my phone because, unlike Adam, I'd taken the effort to establish relationships. I didn't tell them everything. I didn't have to. All I said was that there was a lot going on behind the scenes, and if they trusted me, they should wait a few days before making any major choices. Nobody asked questions or hesitated. That was all I needed to know about their loyalty. Next, I focused on the infrastructure. The advantage of rebuilding a company from the ground up is that you know where every piece fits. Over time, I surreptitiously established a separate business to manage our most precious assets, including intellectual property, customer contracts, and proprietary software. On paper, it was simply a support firm designed to streamline operations. In truth, it was the center of the business, and I owned it entirely. Why hadn't I informed anyone about it? Because I knew something like this was going to happen eventually. Maybe not exactly this, but I had a feeling Adam would try to play some form of power play. What about Dad? Let's just say I gave up expecting him to have my back a long time ago. With everything in place, I spent the remainder of the weekend getting receipts, metaphorically speaking. I sifted through years of documents, emails, contracts, and bank records, gathering evidence of Adam's neglect, mismanagement, and blatant dodgy activity. Some of it was minor issues, such as excessive expenditure and missed deadlines. Other issues were more serious. Side dealings with competitors, questionable transactions, and moves that jeopardized the company's future. By Sunday night, I had a folder thick enough to stop a bullet. But that wasn't the endgame. My intention was not to completely ruin Adam. That would have been too simple, and it would have accomplished nothing. My goal was to remind everyone, Adam, Dad, and the board, why I was the one who had originally turned the firm around. On Monday morning, I awoke earlier than usual. Not because I had anywhere to go, but because I wanted to witness the aftermath in real time. I brewed coffee, put up my laptop in my home office, and connected to the company's internal network. Yes, I still had access. You'd think a guy like Adam, with all his leadership abilities, would have thought to withdraw my credentials right away. But no. The first thing I did was activate the failsafe I had programmed into the system years ago. There were no viruses or other dangerous software involved. It was merely a small script that transferred all internal communications to a secure server under my control. Emails, memos, meeting invitations, it all went through me. Then I focused my attention on Adam's PC. Again, no hacking was necessary. He hadn't even changed his password. It was the same one he'd used since college. I uploaded a video file to his desktop and set it to play automatically when he checked in. What about the video? A highlight reel of his worst decisions, replete with timestamps and accompanying documentation. It wasn't spectacular or too dramatic, it was simply a cold, stark reminder of his inadequacy. By 8:15 a.m., the commotion had started. Adam walked into the office, looking smug as ever, and I observed him through the security feed. He sat down at the CEO's desk, turned on his computer, and leaned back in his chair, as if he owned the place. A second later, the video began playing. At first, he appeared bewildered. Then his face flushed red. He banged the keyboard a few times in an attempt to close the file, but it remained open. Every screen in his office showed the same film in repeat. Meanwhile, the notifications began. Board members, department heads, and major investors' inboxes began to fill up one by one with emails. Each email comprised a piece of evidence I had gathered, along with a brief description of how Adam's actions had harmed the organization. I kept the tone professional, no accusations, just facts. Down in the lobby, federal agents entered. I had informed the authorities about some of Adam's more questionable financial practices, and they were ready to speak with him. What about the cherry on top? An email from the IT department notifying the resignation. They had all signed contracts with my subsidiary and were no longer employed by the corporation. The email concluded with a simple statement. We stand with the person who built this company. I saw Adam try to hold it together. He phoned IT support, but no one answered. He called Dad, but his phone went directly to voicemail. He even tried calling me at one point, but I didn't answer. By mid-morning, the board had called an emergency meeting. Adam was summoned, and from what I saw on the security stream, it was not a friendly conversation. I didn't need to hear what was said in that room to know how things ended. By noon, Adam had been let out of the building. I didn't feel smug or vindicated as I watched the events unfold. If anything, I felt relaxed. This was not about vengeance, it was about balance. Adam had spent years relying on charm and manipulation, but when it came down to it, he couldn't keep it up. What about Dad? Well, he had made his decision? I wasn't sure what would happen next, but one thing was certain, the game had changed. And for the first time in a long time, I had complete control of the situation. The news quickly spread. Employees were muttering by the afternoon about federal authorities arriving, Adam leaving, and the CEO being hauled out of the premises. In the age of immediate communication, this type of turmoil cannot be restrained. By the next morning, rumors had turned into headlines. Company scandal rocks leadership team. There were no names yet, but everyone understood who they were talking about. The stock price plummeted. It wasn't a steady drop, it was a free fall. Investors began withdrawing as soon as they discovered the company's fundamental assets were no longer in its hands. That was intentional, of course. The subsidiary I'd established to house it all had been legally autonomous for years, and it was now the foundation of my new business. Adam inherited a bright, empty shell. Meanwhile, I kept my head down. I wasn't about to show up in the middle of this and look like the man who rubbed salt in the wound. I'd already done enough to disrupt Adam's alleged authority. The following step was not about myself, but about the individuals who truly made the company operate. That morning, I wrote an email to every employee. It was short and to the point. Subject: a new opportunity to the present staff. You have witnessed the happenings of the previous day. Many of you are probably concerned about your future. I want you to know that your efforts and dedication have not gone unappreciated. I'm inviting you to join a new organization where your contributions will be respected, your jobs will be secure, and you'll be working with leaders that value innovation and honesty. Your jobs and benefits will remain unchanged, with more support and possibilities for advancement. If you're interested, you may learn more here. Link. There is no pressure. This is totally your decision. Thank you for what you have done. You deserve better, and I hope I can deliver it. Marcus. By the end of the day, my inbox was swamped with responses. People weren't simply signing on. They were thanking me for giving them an out. It was surreal to hear notes from people who had persevered with the company through its worst days, telling me they believed in me, not the organization that had just collapsed. Over 93% of the employees accepted the offer within hours. Adam, on the other hand, was not doing so well. By midweek, the probe into his financial actions had become public. That's when the true dirt came out. It was discovered that he had been siphoning money via forged vendor contracts. He'd also been collaborating with competitors, selling client information in exchange for under-the-table money. I was aware of some of it, but seeing it all laid out in black and white was overwhelming. The officials acted promptly. Adam was legally charged with fraud, embezzlement, and a variety of other charges. He was released on bail, but his reputation was ruined. The media had a field day, portraying him as the poster child for nepotism gone bad. Every element of his antics, the parties, the reckless spending, and the backroom deals, was brought to light. And then there was Dad. He went radio silent for the first few days, most likely trying to digest what had just transpired. I can only imagine how he felt when he realized that the son he had trusted and favored for decades had turned out to be a massive liability. The board was not spared either. The investors who remained sought answers, and the remaining members scrambled to minimize the damage. But what could they say? The company's basis has been pulled out from underneath them. Everything that made the business valuable was now integrated into my new operation. That week, I met with the leadership team of my new employer. These were the individuals who had followed me out of the chaos. The IT director, the head of operations, a few important managers, and the core development team. We sat around a conference table in the new office space I had secretly reserved months before. It wasn't spectacular, just an efficient modern setup with plenty of room to expand. The first order of business, I continued, is to ensure that everyone feels stable here. No shocks or gimmicks, we've all gone through enough of that. Everyone nodded around the table. I could see relief on their expressions. For years, they had been caught in the crossfire of poor judgment and partiality. They could now focus on their task without worrying about what Adam would do next. The change was not without its challenges. As expected, there were legal challenges, and a few clients required additional reassurance that this was the appropriate decision. But, altogether, things went more smoothly than I had expected. By the end of the month, we were completely operational, and I could finally breathe a bit easier. Meanwhile, the original corporation continued its decline. With no assets, no leadership, and no clear path forward, it became a cautionary tale in the corporate world. The stock price had been artificially inflated by years of hype and was now worth pennies. Investors left, litigation piled up, and the remaining staff struggled to find new positions. Adam, obviously, attempted to spin the story in his favor. He spoke to a local newspaper, stating he had been set up and that the probe was politically motivated. It did not land. By that point, the evidence against him was overwhelming, and even his father refused to defend him publicly. In this scenario, justice was not about destroying Adam, but about holding him accountable. For far too long, he had left it to others to clean up his messes. This time, there was no one left to save him. When the dust settled, the message was clear. Leadership isn't about titles or favoritism. It's about doing the work, winning trust, and accepting responsibility. Adam had failed at all three, and he was now reaping the consequences. I wasn't out for retribution or gloating. I was determined to create something new, free of the faults of the past. The aftermath had been chaotic, but it was also vital. Sometimes the only way to mend something damaged is to dismantle it and start afresh. A week after Adam's public humiliation, I received the call I was expecting. It wasn't from Adam, but from Dad. He'd been keeping his distance ever since things went wrong, but I knew it was only a matter of time before he reached out. He left a short and direct message on my phone. "We need to talk. Your mother and I are going to see you tomorrow." I did not respond. What was there to say? I understood exactly why he was calling. It wasn't an apology, and it certainly wasn't an admission that he had made a mistake. No, this was about the fallout. The tanking stock price, the litigation, the investors bailing out, and the fact that his entire retirement fund was now invested in a company that was on the verge of failure. The next morning, Dad and Mom arrived at my new company's office on time. I had purposefully kept the place low-key, but I was not trying to hide. They discovered me easy enough. When they walked in, I realized how much they had aged in such a short period of time. Dad looked like he hadn't slept in days, and Mom appeared to have been sobbing a lot. They both sat across from me in the small conference room, the tension thick enough to cut with a knife. Dad was the first to speak. "Marcus," he said, his voice straining, "you've made your point, but we need to figure out how to fix this." I sat back in my chair and crossed my arms. "What exactly do you want fixed?" I asked. "What a mess Adam made? The company you allowed him to destroy? Or the reality that your retirement savings are worthless?" Mom flinched, and Dad's expression stiffened. "This isn't the time for blame," he added, trying to remain calm. "We are family. We need to get together and figure this out." I nearly laughed. Now he wants to discuss family? After years of allowing Adam to walk all over me? After firing me in the most humiliating manner possible? Now he was interested in unity? "You don't get to play the family card now, Dad," I responded calmly. "You made it pretty clear where your loyalty lies." He sighed deeply and ran a palm over his face. "I didn't know what Adam was doing," he told me. "Didn't you?" I shot back. "You may not have known the specifics, but you knew he was unqualified. You knew he was overspending. You knew he didn't show up half the time. And you let him take control anyhow." Mom began to speak, but I held up a hand to silence her. "Don't," I replied, shaking my head. "You're not allowed to defend him either. You both made the bed. Now you want me to clean up?" There was a prolonged hush. Finally, Dad stated, "Your mother and I are in a difficult situation. Everything we have saved is related to their firm. If we don't work something out, we may lose the house." And there it was. The real reason for their visit. It was not about Adam or the company. It was about money. I took a deep breath and leaned forward on the table. "I'm going to help you," I said. Relief flooded across their cheeks, but I wasn't finished. "This is how it's going to work," I explained. "I will acquire your company shares at their original value. That will allow you to keep your home and retire comfortably. However, there are some conditions." Dad frowned. "What type of conditions?" "First," I said, "you both sign a non-disclosure agreement. That means no telling anyone, friends, relatives, or reporters, what happened to Adam or the company. Second, you retire peacefully. No more tinkering or attempting to mend things. Third, the money is not free of conditions. You will receive a monthly allowance, and any big expenses must be approved by a trustee." Mom seemed to want to object, but Dad grabbed her arm. "That seems extreme," he responded cautiously. "Extreme?" I repeated, reclining back in my seat. "Dad, I'm being generous." I do not owe you anything. After everything that had happened, I could have gone away and left you to deal with the mess you created. But I am not doing this for you. I'm doing it because deep down, I still care about this family, even though you don't deserve it. That final line impacted more than I expected. I thought Dad was going to protest, but he just nodded slowly. Fine, he said. We'll sign whatever you need us to sign. Mom glanced at him with wide eyes. Leonard? It's the best we're going to get, he interrupted her. I stood up, signaling that the meeting had ended. I'll have the paperwork ready before tomorrow. Once you sign, the cash will be transferred within 48 hours. They also stood, and for a moment, we just stared at each other. This was the man who had always urged me to accept responsibility, admit my faults, and strive for improvement. And here he was, crushed and defeated, pleading for a bailout from the son he'd neglected for years. As they went, Dad looked back and said, "You're a better man than I gave you credit for." I did not respond. Words no longer meant much to me, especially when they came from him. When the door closed behind them, I sat back down and stared at the table for quite some time. This was hardly the victory I had expected. It did not feel like a victory at all. But it was required. Sometimes doing the right thing does not feel pleasant. It simply feels like a satisfactory conclusion. I didn't feel relieved or satisfied the day my parents signed the papers. Instead, I felt a peculiar sense of emptiness. It was finished. They had accepted the terms, and the money was on its way to them. I knew that was the correct thing to do, but it didn't seem like a victory. If anything, it seemed like I was finally bringing an end to something that had been broken for years. But life does not allow for introspection. While my parents adjusted to their new financial reality, I had a firm to run, one that, for the first time, was fully mine. The transfer from the old company to my new venture went more smoothly than I had anticipated. Most of the personnel came over willingly, and the important clients stayed with us. It wasn't only about loyalty. They recognized the value of the relationships and mechanisms we'd established. If anything, the tumult surrounding Adam's demise had strengthened their faith in me. They realized who the true driving force behind the organization had been all along. One of the most significant adjustments I implemented was how we worked as a corporation. I had learned a lot from my blunders in the past, particularly regarding honesty and communication. Under the previous regime, decisions were frequently taken behind closed doors, leaving people rushing to adjust without a clear explanation. I wanted to do things differently. We began holding weekly all-hands meetings where I lay out everything: progress, challenges, and impending goals. No fluff, no business jargon, just plain talk about where we were and where we were going. The first few meetings were slightly awkward. People were unaccustomed to that kind of candor, and I could see some of them were waiting for the other shoe to drop. But, over time, they began to relax. They began to trust me when I claimed we were in this together. One of the most pleasant moments occurred around a month in, when one of the senior devs approached me after a meeting. He'd been with the company for years, one of the silent workhorses who got the job done without making a fuss. "Marcus," he began. "I just wanted to thank you. I've been here a long time, and this is the first time I've felt that someone is truly concerned about what we're doing." It took me off guard. I didn't know what to say, so I simply nodded and said, "That means a lot. Thank you for staying with us." Those brief moments reminded me why I was doing this. It was not about proving something to Adam, Dad, or anyone else. It was about creating something meaningful, something people would be happy to be a part of. By the conclusion of the first quarter, we had achieved not just stability but also growth. Revenue was increasing, client retention was at an all-time high, and we had even begun bringing in new business. The team was electrified, and the workplace was alive with a level of excitement I hadn't seen in years. One day, as I walked through the workplace, I overheard two employees conversing by the coffee machine. They didn't notice me, so I didn't interrupt. "Honestly," one of them admitted, "this is the finest thing that could have occurred. The previous company was a complete mess. I feel like we have a future here." The other person nodded. "Yes, Marcus gets it. He is not just sitting in his office barking instructions, he is genuinely developing something with us." Hearing that was more satisfying than receiving any award or accolade. It wasn't simply the numbers or the growth that mattered, it was the fact that people believed in our mission. Meanwhile, the old corporation was just scraping by. The lawsuits were stacking up, the stock was basically worthless, and the remaining employees were leaving as quickly as they could. Adam, from what I heard, was attempting to avoid the spotlight, but the harm to his reputation had already been done. He was no longer a name people wanted to associate with. By 6 months, the new company had established itself as the industry leader. We were not only surviving, we were innovating. We developed a new product line that improved logistics for small firms, and it grew faster than we expected. It felt like everything I'd been working on for the previous 10 years was finally coming together. For years, I'd fought to prove myself, to Dad, Adam, and everybody else who had ever doubted me. But in that moment, I knew I didn't have to prove anything anymore. I had created something real, something that would last. And for the first time in a long time, I felt calm. It's been 3 years since everything went down. If I'm being honest, I still think about it now and then, not in a bad way, but in a way that makes me wonder how I survived it all. Despite the fact that it drastically altered my life, the entire incident feels like a distant memory. My new company, ours, is booming. When I say thriving, I mean we've achieved every goal I ever imagined imaginable. The team we formed after leaving the previous organization has evolved into something I am very proud of. We are not only lucrative, but also respected. People in the industry regard us as the gold standard, the type of organization that others strive to replicate. That feels good, not because of the recognition, but because it confirms that we are doing things correctly. But let us be honest, prosperity does not erase the past. Every now and then, I find myself going through old emails or looking at news headlines about the consequences. Adam's name crops up on occasion, usually as part of a cautionary story about leadership or nepotism. Last I heard, he was working at a low-level job to avoid detection. I don't maintain tabs on him, but it's difficult not to hear things when your name and his are still vaguely related in some circles. My folks have settled into a tranquil retirement. Mom occasionally sends me emails with updates on their new activities or the neighborhood potlucks they have started hosting. Dad, however, has been mute. I haven't communicated with him since the day he signed the papers in my office. I don't think he's bitter, but I also don't think he understands how to rebuild the bridge he burnt. And frankly, I'm not sure I'd let him try. It's funny how much perspective time provides you. When everything first started, I was so intent on proving myself, showing everyone that I was the one who deserved to lead. But 3 years later, I realize I don't care about it anymore. People who know and work with me already understand the type of person I am. I don't need to shout my triumphs from the rooftops, and I certainly don't need confirmation from those who question me. For those who are wondering how the quiet one came out on top, let me explain. While others were busy posturing and playing politics, I was doing the work. While they were making noise, I was planning. Because, at the end of the day, being the loudest or flashiest is not what defines success. It's about strategy, resilience, and recognizing what you're capable of, even when no one else does. The peacocks may attract attention, but what about the eagles? We are the ones who observe things from above. And that's the end of the story, or the beginning, depending on your perspective. Thank you for sticking around. Please let me know if you have any questions, thoughts, or tales to offer. I was a shadow to my sister's piano career, exploited as my family's ATM. They even used my money for her secret engagement party. I, 35F, am a senior investment analyst for a major Manhattan firm, yet to my family, I am nothing more than a personal ATM. I've been hesitant to tell this tale, but recent developments have compelled me to seek outside viewpoints on a subject that has dominated my life for years. Growing up, our entire family revolved on my younger sister, 31F. She was a piano prodigy who began performing at the age of 4. My earliest memories are of helping Mom, 62 degrees Fahrenheit, and Dad, 65 degrees Fahrenheit, prepare for her recitals, ensuring that everything was just right for their little star. While other kids were learning to ride bikes or going on playdates, I was learning how to iron performance costumes and organize sheet music. Make sure your sister has everything she needs for practice, Mom would say, barely looking up from her phone as she recorded another video of my sister's performance. Don't forget to cook dinner. We'll be late tonight due to her master's class. By the age of 11, I was effectively controlling the home. Laundry, cooking, cleaning, it all fell on me. Because your sister needs to focus on her music, was the incessant refrain. I recall the day I won the state mathematics competition in 8th grade. I went home, clutching my award, only to find Mom furiously preparing for my sister's performance. "That's nice, honey," she commented distractedly. "But could you please assist your sister practice? She needs to perfect this piece for the Carnegie Hall Youth Showcase next month." The trophy wound up in a box in my closet, alongside other forgotten accomplishments. The tendency persisted throughout high school. While my sister traveled for competitions and master lessons, I stayed at home and maintained flawless marks. My parents paid thousands of dollars for my sister's private lessons, special music camps, and custom-made performance apparel. Meanwhile, I had to fight for essential school materials. We need to be practical, Dad would say. Your sister's career development requires all of our resources. I was not permitted to participate in any after-school events since someone needed to be present at home to prepare for my sister's nighttime practice sessions. When I indicated an interest in joining the debate team, Mom looked at me as if I had suggested we burn down the home. How could you be so selfish? She asked. Your sister needs a peaceful, encouraging atmosphere to practice. You understand how crucial this is to her future. Every family gathering became a recital. Relatives would gather around the piano, gushing about my sister's skill as I served refreshments and cleaned up afterwards. Such a helpful girl, they'd say patronizingly before turning back to compliment my sister. I learned to be invisible, moving softly through our house like a ghost, ensuring that everything ran properly while drawing no notice to myself. My parents only truly noticed me when anything went wrong with my sister's routine. Then I became visible, but just as a target for blame. If she had a poor performance, it was because I had not provided a calm setting for her practicing. If she felt fatigued during a competition, it was because I hadn't properly prepared her meals. During my senior year of high school, I was admitted into several top universities on partial scholarships. When I showed my parents the acceptance letters, their reaction was lukewarm, at best. We can't help with any expenses, Dad stated firmly during supper. Your sister's career development needs all our resources. Besides, you're good with household management, maybe you should look into becoming a housekeeper. That's when our neighbors, the Wilsons, intervened. They had seen me grow up and how I helped at their little accounting office after school while waiting for my sister's practices to finish. Mrs. Wilson, 55 degrees Fahrenheit at the time, had always regarded me as a second daughter, taking an interest in my accomplishments and promoting my academic endeavors. They promised to help with my education fees by establishing up a work-study program at their company. My parents didn't complain, they appeared happy to have me taken care of, so they could concentrate only on my sister. When I attempted to talk about my college plans, Mom cut me off. We trust the Wilsons to handle it, she added, immediately returning to her phone and organizing my sister's next appearances. Just make sure this doesn't interfere with your responsibilities at home. The Wilsons became my lifeline. Their encouragement extended beyond financial aid. They demonstrated what it meant to be respected for my own qualities and accomplishments. Mrs. Wilson attended my college orientation when my parents were unable to come due to my sister's summer music festival. Mr. Wilson, 57 million at the time, educated me on financial management and sparked my interest in investment research. Looking back, I understand the Wilsons saw something my parents didn't. A young woman with promise beyond being someone's support network. They supported my education not because they had to, but because they believed in me. Their advice helped me get internships, which led to my current career as a senior investment analyst. Throughout college, I had little touch with my family, only traveling home for important holidays. Each visit followed the same pattern. My sister conducting court in the living room while I assisted in the kitchen, listening to relatives praise her most recent accomplishments. My own accomplishments, Dean's List accolades, internships at famous firms, job offers, were largely overlooked. Everything changed 10 years ago, at what was supposed to be my sister's breakthrough moment. She was preparing for the prestigious Chicago International Piano Competition, which my parents were confident would propel her career to new heights. They'd spent months working out every element, from her performance pieces to her stage demeanor. Even her food was methodically planned to keep her in top-performing condition. The injury occurred during an especially intensive practice session. She was working on Rachmaninoff's Piano Concerto No. 3, a notoriously difficult piece that she persisted on performing despite her teacher's objections. I was at work when Mom called me, her voice quivering with hysteria. Get to Northwestern Memorial ASAP. Your sister, her wrist, you must come right soon. I discovered them in the ER. Mom screaming violently, Dad pacing like a caged animal, and my sister pale and mute, cradling her right wrist. The diagnosis was devastating. Significant tendon injury with potential nerve involvement. The doctor's words sounded like hammers in the sterile hospital room. Significant rehabilitation is required. Prognosis is unknown. Professional performance might no longer be possible. The next few months were a blur of specialists, second opinions, and increasingly frantic attempts at treatment. My parents liquidated everything they could, including Dad's prized vintage Mustang collection, Mom's family antiques, and even their retirement savings. They flew in European specialists, attempted experimental treatments, and sought advice from alternative medicine practitioners, anything that gave them hope. I watched their finances vanish as they sought miraculous treatments. When their financial advisor suggested bankruptcy protection, they looked at him as if he had suggested abandoning their child. Money is just money, Dad said. Our daughter's talent is priceless. I saw he said daughter, as he normally does. Reality set in gradually, like a slow-moving storm. Despite multiple treatments, my sister's wrist never recovered the strength and flexibility required for professional performance. The physicians eventually verified our fears. Her career as a concert pianist was ended. It was more than simply the loss of a profession. It was the dissolution of our entire family mythos. My parents became older in just a few months. Mom stopped fixing her hair and cosmetics, and spent days in her bathrobe viewing footage of my sister's previous performances. Dad, who had always been the family's rock, began missing appointments, bills, and even food. Sometimes they appeared lost, as if their identities were inextricably linked to my sister's musical career. That's when their focus moved to me. But not in the way I had secretly wanted for all those years. They regarded me not as their daughter who could help them recover, but as a financial answer to their escalating issues. I had recently gotten a huge promotion at my firm, becoming a senior analyst before the age of 30, an accomplishment that would have gone unnoticed if it hadn't come with a substantial income rise. "You're doing so well," Mom said on one of her first calls to me in months. Her prideful tone was swiftly followed by, "Your sister needs help with her medical bills. Since you're in such a good position now?" The request was wrapped in layers of remorse and obligation, given with the skillful manipulation that only a mother can perform. At first, I agreed to make a modest monthly donation of $1,000 to help with my sister's therapy and living expenses. It appeared sensible, even necessary. They were family, after all, and I was finally able to give back. The thankfulness looked sincere at first. Mom phoned me on a regular basis to check on my sister's progress, while Dad wrote awkward but emotional thank you emails. But the requests kept coming, each one bigger than the last, with increasingly convoluted excuses. My sister wanted a new automobile because public transportation made her anxious following the incident. My sister's recuperation was hampered by negative energy in the house, which required repair. They required a family vacation because emotional healing is just as important as physical therapy. Then came the credit cards. Just for emergencies, they said, and I was added as an authorized user to their accounts. Their concept of an emergency was surprisingly fluid. Shopping became retail therapy. Costly restaurants were necessary for maintaining family bonds during a crisis, and luxury spa retreats were considered essential for recovery. Monthly expenses rose like ivy on a wall, gradually at first, then abruptly overpowering. $1,000 became $2,000, and finally $3,000. Each increment was followed by detailed explanations and emotional manipulation. "After everything we've done for you," became their regular refrain, though I couldn't recall exactly what they'd done. When I hesitated over a particularly substantial request, Mom reminded me of all the sacrifices they'd made, conveniently forgetting that those sacrifices were solely for my sister. My buddy Rachel, 35F, whom I've known since college, was watching the situation with growing concern. "They're not treating you like family," she explained during our weekly dinner at her parents' restaurant. "They're treating you like an ATM with legs." I dismissed her concerns at first, making excuses about family commitments and filial duty. But her comments stayed with me like burrs. The Wilsons, my long-standing mentors, were also concerned. Mrs. Wilson took me aside after our monthly lunch meeting. "Honey," she began, her face wrinkled with concern. "This is not support, it is exploitation. We didn't help you advance your job so you could become your family's personal banker." The breaking point came last week, when I realized they had spent more than $122,000 on my sister's therapeutic shopping spree, without telling me. The expenses included designer clothes, spa treatments, and a weekend at a luxury resort, all explained as necessary for her emotional recovery. When I tried to talk about setting boundaries, Mom fell into tears and gave an Oscar-worthy act about how I was abandoning the family in our time of need. Later that night, Dad called. His voice was gruff and disapproving, using the same authoritarian tone that had kept me in line throughout my youth. "Your sister requires our assistance more than ever," he admonished. "How can you be so selfish when she's still trying to find her way? We've raised you better than this." The irony of his words, "we raised you," hit me like a physical blow. Did they raise me, or did I raise myself under the influence of their obsession with my sister? Yesterday, I received another credit card statement for $115,000 for a health retreat that I never approved. When I called to inquire, my sister answered the phone. "You make so much money," she added dismissively, with the same arrogant tone I remembered from childhood. "Stop being stingy. You know Mom and Dad need this to deal with everything they've been through because of me." I'm writing from my office on the 47th level of our Manhattan building, surrounded by the trappings of my success, despite, rather than because of, my family's support. The chart on my second monitor depicts my family's financial abuse in cold, hard statistics. Over the last year, they've spent more than $150,000 of my money, which is more than most families' annual income. My financial consultant is concerned about the implications for my long-term financial security. My therapist gently indicates that it is important to set hard boundaries. Rachel alternates between providing her guest room and volunteering to tell my family where they can go, in many languages, thanks to her worldwide business experience. But every time I consider cutting them off, I remember the little girl who simply wanted her parents to appreciate her accomplishments. The adolescent who believed that if she worked hard enough, someone would eventually recognize her as more than a support system. The young woman who still hopes that her family would see her as more than a resource. I'm currently at a crossroads, confronting decisions I never intended to make. The Wilsons, who have been more like parents to me than my own, advise I should protect myself. Rachel provides practical assistance and a secure place to ponder. My therapist discusses boundaries and self-respect, words that appear easy but bear the weight of decades of familial relationships. I'm having trouble with questions that don't seem to have any correct answers. Am I being ruthless by considering financial constraints? Is it immoral to want appreciation for my own achievements? Should I simply accept that this is my job in the family, the dependable one, the responsible one, the human ATM? I really don't know anymore. Update 1. My world imploded yesterday when I found on Instagram that my parents are presently in Hawaii, not for a vacation, but for my sister's secret engagement party, which they paid for with my credit card. During lunch, I was aimlessly scrolling through my feed when I came across a post from a mutual acquaintance that stopped me cold. Paradise with the future wife, what's Josh, engagement bliss to Hawaii. There she was, beaming on a beautiful beach, standing next to her boyfriend, now fiancé, with our parents and his family in the background. They had been there for 3 days. I went 3 days without hearing a word from you. Confused and hurt, I opened my banking app. The charges struck me like fists. First-class flights to Honolulu cost $24,800. Grand WEA Resort, 3 ocean view suites for $21,600. Additional expenses include a welcome meal, spa treatments, a sailing excursion, and a private beachside dinner for $12,000. My hands shook as I dialed Mom's number. When she responded, I could hear Hawaiian music and laughter in the background. "Oh honey," she explained casually, "your father and I just decided to take a short break. You're aware of how tough things have been lately? A short break at the Grand WEA with my sister's fiancé's complete family? That kind of break cost more than $58,000 on my credit card." Silence. Muffled voices. Then my sister got on the phone, her remarks oozing with entitlement. "Listen, Miss Executive," she snarled. "You are not required here. You are no longer family, but rather a walking ATM. Nobody wants to hear about your valuable career as we celebrate my engagement." I urged myself to be calm. "That ATM just paid nearly $60,000 for your little party." She laughed coldly. "That's what you're good at, isn't it? Keep doing your fancy job, and we'll enjoy spending your money. It's the only thing you're helpful for." Always was. The call went dead. Within minutes, they had blocked me on all platforms. Mom sent a final message that read, "We're all tired of your negative attitude and jealousy. Please leave us alone. You've spoiled enough precious moments for your sister." Something cold and hard solidified in my chest. My hands remained steady when I accessed my banking app. Each click felt like it broke another link in the chain that had connected me to their torture. Click. Hotel reservations are canceled. Click. Spa packages and excursions are canceled. Click. Return flight tickets have been canceled. Click. Mom's card is permanently deactivated. The aftermath was immediate. My phone burst with calls and messages. "Mom. It's an emergency. Call immediately. Dad says. Fix this quickly. You are embarrassing the family. Sister. You better get this right. Number. Hawaii. The future in-laws, without a doubt." As the hours passed, their tone changed. Mom said, "Sweetie, please, we can talk." Father. "We'll pay you back." Sister. "Stop being so petty, it is my engagement." Then my sister sent out a social media blast. I can't believe my own sister would spoil the best time of my life. She has always been envious, but this is a new low. Toxic family. Heartbroken. I'd been quiet long enough. I shared everything, screenshots, credit card statements, and messages. The truth about their hidden celebration, unapproved charges, and nasty statements. The tide shifted immediately. People rallied in support as they realized the truth behind their carefully prepared narrative. Mutual friends informed me of the consequences of my acts. My parents needed to borrow money merely to purchase economy flights home. They had to check out of the Grand WEA in front of other visitors. My sister had a temper tantrum in the lobby, which ended up on TikTok. The actual explosion occurred when the fiancé's family discovered they had been caught up in my family's web of deception. They'd been promised a fully compensated luxury holiday, only to find out they were part of a plot to exploit the rich sister. The engagement itself is being called into question, with the fiancé's family questioning the entire arrangement. I am writing this update from my friend Rachel's guest room. The Wilsons have shown their support, reminding me that true family does not treat you like an ATM. I have locked all of my accounts, and my lawyer is drafting cease and desist letters. What is the most difficult part? I don't feel anything. There is no guilt. There's no sadness. Just relief. It's as if I've finally laid down a burden I've been carrying my entire life. Perhaps that is what freedom feels like. Update 2. My Hawaii post has had an illuminating impact. What began as a family quarrel has revealed years of deception to a much larger audience than planned. 3 days after my previous post, I received an email from my sister's fiancé's mother. We met in a quiet cafe in Manhattan. We had no idea, she said, wrapping her hands around her coffee cup. Your parents informed us that they were wealthy financial managers, and that your sister was taking a sabbatical from her concert piano career. They stated that this luxury vacation was a gift to both families. She revealed specifics concerning my family's dishonesty. They portrayed themselves as wealthy sophisticates, telling anecdotes about their great occupations and my sister's temporary hiatus from performing. The realization struck their family hard. James is devastated, she continued. Not for the money, but for the lies. He confronted my sister about using my credit cards without authorization. She chuckled and stated, "She's my sister, her money is family money." That evening, James ended their engagement. I can't build a life with someone who thinks it's okay to steal from and exclude their own sister, he told her. He returned the ring and walked away, his family fully supporting his decision. My sister's reaction was explosive. She recorded a lengthy Instagram live tirade blaming me for losing her chance at happiness, and when that failed to get traction, she began contacting my colleagues, spreading stories about how I abandoned my family during their time of need. However, her efforts backfired. My documented post had already made the rounds. People had seen the credit card statements, read the texts, and recognized the pattern of exploitation. Each fresh attack from her simply strengthened my narrative. My parents' professional consequences has been devastating. Dad's consulting customers began to distance themselves, Mom's social position in her charity circles plummeted, and their carefully cultivated image was broken. They've been trying to reach me via every imaginable method, and the tone of their messages alternates between appealing and demanding. We are still your parents. You can't just cut us off after all we've done for you. Your sister is devastated. How can you be so cruel? We'll pay you back, just give us time. They showed up at my workplace yesterday. Security turned them away, but not before Mom made a fuss in the lobby, wailing about her ungrateful daughter. My colleagues have been quite sympathetic, with several sharing their own experiences with family financial abuse. The Wilsons have been my rock throughout this. Mrs. Wilson helped me update all of my banking information and set up additional security measures, and Mr. Wilson is aiding me in documenting every unlawful transaction for possible legal action. Rachel's parents offered me their guest house for as long as I needed it. Family doesn't steal from family, Rachel's mom told me. And they certainly don't exclude their own daughter from family celebrations while spending her money. My sister's ex-fiancé's family has been surprisingly supportive, openly defending my actions and sharing their own experiences with my family's dishonesty. Their narrative has helped others understand the full extent of the manipulation. My parents sent me a big envelope today containing a promissory note for the Hawaii expenses, as well as a letter about healing our family bonds and moving forward together. They advised family therapy and regular meals to help re-establish trust. However, there was no acknowledgement of their decades of emotional abuse, or of how they'd methodically abused me while removing me from the family. The letter spoke of misunderstandings, as if $58,000 in illegal charges and a secret family celebration were simple mistakes. I returned the letter unopened, accompanied with a formal cease and desist notification from my lawyer. Some extended family members have attempted to mediate. They're still your parents, they explain. Family is family. But here's the thing, they've never treated me like family. I was their housekeeper, their ATM, their backup plan, never their daughter, sister, or true part of the family. I'm tired of being the family bank, The unseen support system, and sacrificing my financial and emotional security for people who see me as nothing more than a resource to be used. For the first time in my life, I am putting myself first. My money is my money, my time is my time, and my life is my life, which is extremely freeing. Update 3. It's been a month since my previous update, and I finally accomplished something I never imagined possible. Full tranquility. 2 weeks ago, my family made their final attempt at reconciliation, arriving to my apartment with photo albums and recital programs. The doorman refused to let them in, but they waited in the lobby for hours. "We just want to remind her of the good times," Mom told the doorman, flipping through images of my sister's performances and pointing out shots where I might be seen in the background, usually hauling equipment or adjusting costumes. Dad attempted to contact my colleagues via LinkedIn. "We're worried about our daughter's mental health," he wrote. "She's cutting off her loving family over a simple misunderstanding about shared finances." My coworkers shared his mails to me, along with comments justifying my behavior. My sister's current social media technique has been to play the victim, creating videos about toxic individualism and how money destroys families, while carefully editing out the unauthorized charges and the secret engagement party. However, the comment sections are brimming with folks who have shared the entire narrative. The final straw came when they contacted the Wilsons to make me see reason. Mr. Wilson responded quickly and emphatically. "You've exploited her for years. Leave her alone. I've changed my phone number, shut down my accounts, and even pondered moving to another city. My therapist thinks I'm finally recovering my life, and for the first time in years, I feel liberated." They phoned the Wilsons to help me see reason. Mr. Wilson's response was perfect. "For 30 years, I've seen you treat her as nothing more than a convenience. She is finally appreciating herself as she should have been regarded all along. My lawyer has written formal letters requesting payback of all improper transactions, which totaled over $287,000 over 3 years. They claim everything was agreed upon and that I'm rewriting history. The bank's fraud department disagrees, and investigations are still ongoing. I've moved to a new apartment in a secure building, my mail has been routed through a screening agency, my phone number has changed, my email has rigorous filters, and my social media profiles have been canceled or made private. Last week, I was offered a partnership track position, and the managing partner commented that my management of the family problem demonstrated the kind of backbone they look for in a leader. Without the continual drain of family expectations, I've been able to focus on my profession. Rachel's parents have informally adopted me. I have standing Sunday dinner invitations, and her mother keeps accidentally cooking too much food. They urge that I attend their annual Cape Cod vacation. "Real family vacations don't involve stealing," Rachel's father quipped as we organized the trip. Mrs. Wilson has been helping me rediscover abandoned interests, and I've started taking photography classes, which I couldn't do in high school because it would have clashed with my sister's practice schedule. The Wilsons are still my steady mentors. The extended family is still pushing for reconciliation. But what about the holidays? What happens when your parents are older? These queries used to make me feel guilty. Now they just remind me of how one-sided our relationship was. My therapist pointed out that my family's behavior follows a common pattern of financial abuse, which is veiled by cultural expectations of familial obligation. "You're not breaking family bonds," I was told. "You're breaking free from exploitation." The most significant shift has occurred internally. The worry that used to follow every phone contact, email, and bank alert has vanished. I no longer flinch when my phone calls or feel terrible about spending my own money on myself. Last weekend, I bought an abstract painting that spoke to me, and as I hung it, I realized it was the first time I had bought something solely for myself, rather than for someone else. My sister's most recent post accuses me of being callous for abandoning family. Nevertheless, I have not abandoned family. Rather, I have discovered my true family. It's Rachel's parents asking about my day, and they mean it. It's the Wilsons honoring my accomplishments without expecting anything in return. My coworkers are the ones who never hesitate to defend me. Sometimes I think of that little girl who ironed concert dresses and made dinners to get attention, and I wish I could tell her she deserved more. That being useful is not synonymous with being loved. The real family does not treat you like an ATM. I'm not an ATM. I'm not a support system. I am not a resource to be used. I am free. I spent 2 years planning and funding a Europe trip for my parents, only for them to take my unemployed sister instead. Mom grinned. "We chose to take your sister because she needed some rest." I remained silent. When they arrived in Europe, they were taken by surprise. As she went out onto the porch and pulled her luggage behind her, my mother exclaimed, "You're late." I looked at my dashboard's clock. The time was 6:02 a.m. I forced a smile and added, "Mom, you're 2 minutes late." My sister Lauren was coming out of the house with her own suitcase in tow as I stepped out of the van to assist with the luggage. My grin went cold. "What's happening?" I asked, attempting to speak steadily. My mother turned to face me, her face too happy for the occasion. "Oh, Violet, we agreed that Lauren should attend in your place. She truly needs this trip because she has been under a lot of stress lately." My chest constricted. "Instead of me? I've been preparing this for years, Mom. Everything was paid for by me." She dismissively waved her hand as though I had just brought up a pointless detail. "And we appreciate that, darling, but you put in a lot of effort every day. Later, you can go somewhere else." "Lauren urgently needs this?" Lauren lacked even the grace to appear guilty. She simply shifted her weight onto one hip and grinned. With a tone full of phony appreciation, she responded, "Thanks for understanding, sis." My heart was racing as I gazed at the two of them. After a time, my dad handed me his suitcase and shuffled out, avoiding eye contact. I trembled as I said, "This is unbelievable. I have something to share with you. This was supposed to be our trip." My mother smiled and remarked, "Well, it still is. Instead, just with Lauren. Violet, don't worry about it. Your sister is in dire need of a vacation. I'm Violet, and I've been working extra hours and saving every cent for a trip my parents will never forget for the past 2 years. I organized every aspect, including the final dinner reservation, flights, upscale lodging, and guided tours. But as I saw my sister climb into the back seat of my car in my parents' driveway, I came to the realization that no matter how hard I tried, it didn't matter. This was something I had been dreading for years. Lauren would always come first in their eyes. Biting back the scathing remark that was on the tip of my tongue, I tightened my jaw. I opened the trunk instead, forcing a strained smile. "Then, let's get started," I remarked in a bland voice. Okay, if they decided to put her before me, they could accompany her. I wasn't going to let them have fun though. With the exception of Lauren's constant conversation, the journey to the airport was oppressively quiet. "Oh my God, Mom, did you see the Paris-related TikTok? The prospect of shopping there excites me. Will the excursions take up the entire day, or do you believe we'll have time for that?" I forced myself not to speak as I glanced straight ahead, my hands tightening their grasp on the driving wheel. My mother laughed quietly. "We will have time, of course. When we arrive, we'll work it out." I took a bite out of my cheek. Once we arrive. They didn't even appear to realize that I was no longer a member of that we. My father cleared his throat once. "We appreciate you taking us, Violet. I am aware that this feels strange." I looked in the rearview mirror at him. "Unusual. That's a clever way to phrase it, Dad." He didn't answer. He only shuffled uneasily in his chair, perhaps wishing he had said nothing at all. Lauren's voice was annoying as she leaned forward from the back seat. "You're not angry, are you? I mean, letting me go is incredibly big of you. On my own, I could never have afforded this." I made a tight smile and tightened my jaw. "Lauren, of course, have fun on the journey." My patience was ebbing by the time we arrived at the airport drop-off area. My mother hugged me while I assisted them in unloading their bags. "I appreciate your understanding, my love. This is really important to Lauren and to us." I gave a rigid nod. "Yes, Mom." Wheeling her bag toward the door, Lauren smiled. "Thank you, Violet. You are the greatest." My chest was constricted with hurt and rage as I watched them vanish inside the terminal. It was a blur on the way home. I repeatedly reenacted the exchange in my mind, with each statement having a deeper meaning than the one before. Lauren is really touched by this. "You're not angry, are you? You work so hard all the time." After parking in my driveway, I spent a few minutes sitting in the car and holding onto the steering wheel until my knuckles became white. Then, without hesitation, I strode inside, took out my laptop, and signed into all of the travel accounts I had used to make the reservation. Reservations for a hotel? Cancelled. Tours? Reimbursed. Upgrades on airlines? Lost. The constriction in my chest began to loosen as I gazed at the confirmation emails that were accumulating in my inbox. They wouldn't be staying in 5-star hotels or doing private tours on my pay if they wanted to take Lauren instead of me. I felt a wave of satisfaction wash over me as I shut down my laptop. In Paris, they could explain themselves to the receptionists. I had had enough of being a doormat. When their plane touched down, the calls began. As I unpacked my suitcase, the one I had meticulously prepared for a trip that was no longer mine, my phone began to vibrate constantly. As I put my shoes back on the rack and hung up my clothes, I couldn't help but notice the irony. The incessant vibration of the humming permeated the entire area. I picked up the phone, looked at the screen, and sighed. It displayed my mother's name along with a number of missed calls and texts. I went through the messages after unlocking the phone. "What's going on, Violet? We are unable to check in at the hotel. There is no reservation. Give me a call now. This isn't humorous, Violet. Take care of this right away." Before I could stop myself, I let out a laugh. Make this right? After what they had done, did they really think I would step in and save the day? Lauren was calling when the phone buzzed once again. She left me a voicemail after I let it ring. With a tone full of entitlement, she yelled, "Violet, this is so petty. You're the reason we're stuck here. Now is the time to call the hotel and have things fixed." Without hearing the remainder, I rolled my eyes and erased the voicemail. I had been their fixer for years, picking up all the slack and smoothing over all the mistakes. No more. I finally made the decision to respond, if only to put an end to the flurry of calls. As soon as I picked it up, my mother's voice hit me like a tidal wave of rage. "What did you do, Violet? None of the tours are currently scheduled, and the hotel claims that the reservation was canceled." After listening to her tirade for a while, I simply responded, "I canceled them." After a lengthy moment of astonished silence, she growled, "Why would you do that?" I answered in a sarcastic tone. "Oh, I don't know. Perhaps because you chose to accompany Lauren on my journey. I even drove you to the airport, so you're lucky." "We assumed you would comprehend," she yelled. "Understand?" I said, raising my voice. "Those years of saving and planning didn't matter because Lauren needed a break? That my hard work meant nothing to you? Guess what, Mom? I don't understand, and I don't care to—" Before she could answer, I hung up and threw my phone on the couch, turning it off. The ensuing quiet was lovely, and I felt as though I could breathe again for the first time in a long time. They could manage the rest of the journey without me, but it's okay if they decided to put Lauren first. There was only a day of silence. My phone was ringing with calls and messages once more by the next morning. I ignored them at first. I caught up on work and cleaned the house during the day. But by nightfall, my curiosity overcame me. I grabbed my phone and readied myself for the barrage of texts that would come in. From my mother. "You've gone too far, Violet. Your father is angry, and your sister is crying. None of the hotels you reserved are accessible to us." From Lauren. "You're behaving like a kid. Why you're making such a huge deal out of this is beyond me. Just get things fixed already." And lastly, from my father. "We must speak. This is incorrect." I shook my head and put the phone down. I had been the one making repairs and ensuring everyone was content for years. They were unsure of how to respond now that I had retreated. I sat at the kitchen table, letting my rage boil, and made myself a cup of tea. They have no right to expect me to tidy up their mess. How could they pretend that I was at fault? Minutes later, I took the next call and answered it. "Violet." Before I could speak, my mother yelled. "This is no longer amusing. We're stuck. How embarrassing is this, do you know?" I sipped my tea slowly. "Shameful? Do you find this embarrassing? Imagine saving for years and organizing every aspect of the vacation, only to be informed that you won't even be going. Quit being so dramatic," she yelled. "Lauren was more in need of this than you were," I firmly stated, "and now she can figure it out." "Mom, you made your choice. Okay, so you wanted to take Lauren rather than me. However, don't count on me to pay for her trip. We're related," she growled. "We don't treat one another like this." I laughed resentfully. It's funny, I had the exact same thought. Lauren's whimpering voice could be heard in the background. "Simply hang up on her, Mom. She is acting in an unthinkable manner." That was the last straw. With a cold tone, I said, "Enjoy your trip." "You can't," I said. "Since it's not your journey. I owned it, and now it belongs to no one. Farewell." Before she could answer, I hung up and shut off my phone once more. For the remainder of the evening, I experienced a strange mixture of relief and rage, relief that I had finally defended myself, and fury that they had placed me in this predicament. All they wanted to do was label me dramatic. I wasn't allowing people to take advantage of me for the first time in my life. The days that followed were gloriously peaceful. I was finally able to concentrate straight without being distracted by guilt trips and accusations when I turned off my phone. I sipped coffee on my back porch in the mornings and relished the peace I had long sought. My afternoons were spent working and finishing small tasks that I had been putting off, which served as a reminder of my abilities when I wasn't constrained by their never-ending demands. My curiosity overcame me by the third day. There were more than a dozen voicemails waiting for me when I turned my phone back on. My mother sent the first several messages, becoming more and more frantic with each one. You must give me a call back immediately, Violet. This has gotten out of hand. It's unbelievable that you're doing this. We are humiliated by you. How could you treat us like this when we are your parents? Lauren's communications then arrived, replete with the arrogant tone she had usually employed. This is quite trivial, even for you. Everything is being ruined by you. Violet, just repair it. My dad's voice finally emerged, a little softer but no less sharp. I don't know what happened to you, Violet. Give us a call back so we can resolve this. After a moment of hesitation, I listened to my mother's lengthy final message. This time, she spoke more quietly and with a hint of annoyance and weariness. We're back at the airport now, Violet, she said. I hope you are pleased with yourself, but the trip is spoiled. Your father and I are, well, disappointed doesn't even come close to describing how upset your sister is. When you're ready to speak, give us a call. Without responding, I erased the voicemails. To be honest, I wasn't prepared to speak and wasn't sure if I ever would be. This was the result of years of them prioritizing Lauren and expecting me to smile in acceptance. It wasn't a one-time error. As the hours went by, I couldn't help but think back on all the occasions I'd been ignored or disregarded, every family get-together where Lauren's whims controlled the schedule, every holiday when my achievements were viewed as an afterthought. Although the Fishers had been developing for years, this trip had been the tipping point. Grace dropped by unexpectedly that night with 2 cups of coffee and a curious expression on her face. She placed the coffee on the table and remarked, I heard about what happened. Your mother gave me a call yesterday. She had, of course. When my mother attempted to coerce me into complying, she had always been skilled at finding allies. And? I took a sip and inquired. A wicked smile crept onto Grace's face as she shrugged. I informed her that you were most likely busy and would contact her again when you had time. I shook my head and laughed. You are the greatest. No, because you finally stood up for yourself. You're the best, she remarked in a suddenly serious tone. Violet, I understand how difficult that is. Don't allow them to get you down again. Long after she was gone, her words remained with me. Grace was correct. I had put in too much effort to please individuals who never seemed to appreciate what I had done. It was time to permanently end that cycle. I experienced an odd feeling of clarity by the time the weekend arrived. Freedom, which I hadn't experienced in years, joined the rage that was still bubbling beneath the surface. Freedom from their never-ending demands. Freedom from fixing things for the family. Freedom to live my life as I see fit. However, the silence was short-lived, as anticipated. When I eventually received a call on a Sunday afternoon, I chose to answer it. My dad did it this time. With a tired tone, he said, Violet, your mom wanted me to call. She believes you will pay attention to me. I said, reclining in my chair. Go on. He sighed. Look, everything has gotten out of control. Lauren is angry, your mom is outraged, and, well, it's a complete disaster. However, you are superior to this. I tensed up as his comments sparked a new round of rage. Dad, better than what? Defending myself? Refusing to let you trample me once more? I didn't mean that, he added hastily. You've always been the sensible one, that's all. The one who maintains order. This isn't like you, I said, making a brief, sour laugh. You're right, it's not like me, because I'm not bending over backward to clean up your mess. When he hesitated, I briefly believed he would finally understand my point of view. However, he subsequently stated, you're punishing the whole family over one decision. Is that really fair? Fair? I asked again, raising my voice. You want to talk about fair? Was it fair when you and Mom decided I wasn't important enough to be part of the trip I planned? Was it fair when you replaced me with Lauren, like I didn't matter? He said. That's not what we were trying to do, in a defensive tone. We just thought Lauren needed it more. I yelled, of course you did? You always think she needs more attention, more support, more of everything. And I'm always the one expected to sacrifice for her. Not anymore. It was so quiet on the other end of the line. At last, he stated, I don't know what you want me to say. I don't need you to say anything, I said in a steady voice. I just need you to understand that I'm done being the afterthought. From now on, I come first. Goodbye, Dad. With shaking hands, I hung up and put the phone down. I allowed myself to feel everything for the remainder of the day, including relief, grief, and rage. Although it wasn't simple, it felt like a fresh beginning. I was no longer and never would be the family's fixer. They were capable of resolving their own mess. I was waiting for my parents and Lauren at their place when they eventually came back. I'd parked in their driveway, sipping coffee and feeling surprisingly calm as I watched their taxi pull up. As they stepped out, dragging their suitcases behind them, their faces were a mix of exhaustion and irritation. Lauren was the first to speak. "Well, I hope you're happy, Violet." I raised an eyebrow, staying seated on the porch swing. "Happy about what?" "Our trip was a disaster," my mom snapped, waving her hand as if to brush the whole thing away. "We spent the entire week staying in dingy hotels and eating terrible food because we couldn't afford anything decent. And don't get me started on the tours." Lauren chimed in, crossing her arms. "Oh wait, there weren't any? Do you know how embarrassing it was to show up and be told there was no reservation?" I took another sip of coffee, letting their frustrations wash over me. "Sounds rough," I answered finally, my voice cool. "But you wanted to take Lauren, remember? I'm sure you all had some great bonding time." "That's not the point," my mom shot out, her voice rising. "You knew we couldn't afford all the things you'd planned. You set us up to fail." I stood up, setting my drink down on the tiny table next to me. "No, Mom, I didn't set you up for anything. I planned a trip for the three of us, something special I'd been saving for years. You're the ones who decided to cut me out at the last second." When my father did speak, it was in a lower but no less accusing tone. "You didn't have to cancel everything, Violet. That was extreme." With my arms folded, I questioned. "Was it? Why should I have paid for a trip I wasn't even invited to? If Lauren needed it so badly, you should have planned it yourselves. You're lucky I didn't cancel the return flight." Lauren rolled her eyes. "You're so dramatic. It's just money, Violet." "And you're so entitled," I retorted, at last losing patience. "Or do you just think that because someone else handles it, things automatically happen for you? Do you have any idea how much work and sacrifice went into planning that trip?" For a time, they stood stunned into silence. With a steady yet forceful voice, I went on. "I've spent years being the responsible one, the one who fixes things, plans things, and makes sure everything runs smoothly. Additionally, you've taken everything for granted for an equal amount of time." My mother began to say, "That's not fair." But I interrupted her by raising a hand. "No, Mother. The way you treated me is unfair. I decided to stop being your doormat because, as usual, you picked Lauren over me. Did you not want me to go? All right. However, without me, you are unable to reap the rewards of my labors." I turned to go after grabbing my luggage from the porch swing. "I'm happy you made it back safely, but don't count on things to return to normal. I'm finished." They called after me as I was making my way to my car, their words a mixture of shame and rage, but I didn't turn around. Every visit from my parents' place had left me emotionally spent for years, but this time I felt lighter after saying all I'd been holding in and, for once, not worrying about their reaction. The trip home was oddly serene. I prepared a cup of tea when I came home and sat on the couch, mentally reliving the encounter. They had been so confident that I would give in, as I always do, but seeing their shocked expressions as I left served as a reminder of how much I had changed. I was done spending my life to satisfy their expectations, therefore it didn't matter if they were upset, offended, or ashamed. Grace called me the following day. "How did it go?" Without making an effort to be polite, she inquired. I leaned back against the kitchen counter and chuckled. "Just as you would expect. Lauren is sulking, they are enraged, and Mom is presumably attempting to find a way to guilt me back into compliance." Grace gave a little snort. "Give her a chance. Now that you have a backbone, I'm here to make sure it remains in place." I smiled, appreciating her steadfast assistance. "Grace, thank you. I mean it. Throughout everything, you have been my pillar of support." "Anytime," she continued, her tone softening. "So, now that you're not playing family fixer anymore, what's next for you?" Since the encounter, I had been wondering what would happen next. I had spent years trying to win my family's approval and pleasing them, so now that I was free of that weight, the options felt limitless, and a bit scary. I said, "I don't know yet, but I feel like I have the final say. No one else, not even them. Only me." I heard Grace say, "Sounds like the start of something amazing," and her smile was audible. Over the course of the following few weeks, I began making little adjustments that felt significant in their own right. I redecorated my living room, replacing my parents' hand-me-down furniture with pieces that felt particularly mine, and I spent weekends visiting nearby parks and cafes, things I had always wanted to do but had never had time for. I began journaling, putting down my ideas and dreams without considering what other people would think of them. Every little step felt like regaining a piece of myself that I had been unaware I had lost. As the cancelled reservations looked back at me one evening when I sat down with my laptop and opened the spreadsheet I had used to organize the trip, I felt a wave of resolve rather than regret. I wasn't going to waste that money, which had been intended for a once-in-a-lifetime event, so I closed the spreadsheet, opened a new tab in my browser, and searched solo travel ideas. It wasn't the same itinerary I'd planned for them, and it wasn't about making a statement anymore. Instead, it was for me, a chance to celebrate my independence and finally put myself first, when I scheduled a solo trip to Italy a few weeks following my parents' return. I had never traveled alone before, so I was both excited and anxious when I landed in Rome. However, as soon as I left the airport and entered the busy city, I knew I had made the right choice. There was no schedule, no one else to think about, just me and the freedom to do exactly what I wanted. I spent my days exploring cobblestone alleyways, marveling at ancient ruins, and enjoying meals at quaint tiny cafes. I took out my journal, which I had carried with me, one afternoon while enjoying a gelato. I had been writing about my goals for years, but they were usually entwined with making other people happy. As I was writing, the emphasis changed. Acquire a new language. Launch a modest company. Visit a minimum of 5 other nations. As the list expanded, each objective reflected the life I wished to lead rather than the one that had been expected of me. As I ate supper at a small, family-run restaurant with a view of the Arno River on my last night in Florence, I was struck with a profound sense of tranquility as I watched the sunset paint the sky in shades of pink and orange. I'd spent so much of my life trying to get my family's favor, but here, thousands of miles away, I realized something crucial. I didn't need it. I was enough, just the way I was. This trip had been more than just a vacation. It was a turning point. My parents made another attempt to contact me after I got home, using more tactful language and well-crafted texts. One of my mom's texts said, "I hope you had a good trip. Perhaps we can all talk soon." I put down my phone after staring at the message for a while, deciding that this time it would be on my terms and that I wasn't ready to respond. I felt proud as I put trinkets on my shelf and unloaded my suitcase. My mom called me a week after I got back from my vacation, and I picked it up this time. "Hello, Violet," she said in a tone that was surprisingly gentle. "How was your journey?" "It was amazing," I answered in a bland tone. "That's excellent to hear," she continued, hesitating as though she was trying to find the proper words. "And we have been reflecting on what happened a lot. Perhaps we did not handle things well." Although I was taken aback by the admission, I wasn't yet prepared to forgive her. "Wrongly. Without even asking, you took my spot on a trip that I organized and paid for." "That's an understatement," she whispered. "I know. Your dad and we were unaware of how deeply it would harm you." "What about Lauren? Is she still blaming me for spoiling her vacation, or does she feel bad too?" I inquired. "She's upset," she said. "But I think she knows now she could have handled things better." I leaned on the counter and sighed. "This was more than just the vacation, Mom. It has to do with years of prioritizing her and expecting me to make up the difference. I've stopped doing it." She paused before responding. "I get that. We will make an effort to perform better. We'd rather not lose you." I had learned enough to not let guilt control my decisions, even if her remarks struck a deep chord with me. I answered, "I'm happy to hear that, but fixing this will require more than just words. Real effort, not just excuses, is what I need to see." "You will," she stated. "We'll give you the space you need, but I hope you'll let us back in someday." As I sat down with my journal that evening, I recognized something crucial. Whether or not they changed was not my duty. After the call, I felt a range of feelings, including satisfaction that they were finally admitting their behavior and skepticism about whether they would truly change. I maintained my boundaries throughout the next few months, answering their calls and texts when I felt like it, but I didn't make an effort to make amends or diffuse arguments. Instead, I concentrated on creating the life I desired. Every step I took felt like regaining another aspect of myself, so I joined a local hiking group, took a photography class, something I'd always wanted to do but never had the time or energy for, and even began organizing my next solo trip. I skipped the family cruise, and my parents went crazy because they treat me poorly and idolize my brother. I'm not even sure when it began, but I felt like my brother Adam and I belonged to 2 different households. Perhaps I first became aware of the obvious difference in how we were treated in high school. Adam had been found to be a drug dealer. My parents said it wasn't a huge thing, just a difficult time he was going through. However, after I was found smoking marijuana, it seemed as though I had set the home on fire. My mind was racing as my parents, Richard and Beth, threatened to expel me. My parents would give Adam a blanket and claim he was merely experimenting, but I recognized then that Adam might set the world on fire. Me? They would contact the fire department and I could light a match. This disparity simply widened over time. Adam, frequently referred to as the golden child, left college 3 times. My parents dismissed it as inconsequential each time. He's still finding himself, they would say. In the meantime, they chastised me for not trying hard enough, and I graduated from college a semester late. My achievements never seemed sufficient. I got my first serious work as a technical writer by the time I was 22 in 2020. I was really pleased with myself. However, that moment was short-lived. I was immediately removed from my parents' health insurance. They cut me off entirely as a kind of reward for my independence, proof that I could manage alone. Adam, meanwhile, continued to be covered by their insurance until last year, when he turned 26. I had to stand on my own 2 feet for 4 more years, whether I was ready or not, while still being treated like a child. The imbalance grew unavoidable over time. Adam continued to reside in Colorado, the state where he had left college. My parents paid him money for basics, bills, and rent even though he didn't work or attend school. With this assistance, what did he do? Yes, he purchased a $22,000 dog for himself. I recall listening to my parents rave about Adam's new German Shepherd, Max, as I sat in my tiny apartment making a grocery budget. The worst of it was when I was fired in early 2023 at the age of 24. Due to the company's downsizing, I was no longer able to afford rent. I was forced to return to Oklahoma City, my hometown. My parents made me feel much more like a failure than I already did. I found a new position in May 2023 after months of looking for work. They surprised me by claiming I owed them $10,000 in unpaid rent on the day I happily informed them of my new job. Yes, you read correctly, $10,000. When I moved in, we hadn't even talked about rent. My parents agreed to let me stay till I recovered. I helped out where I could by doing freelance work and contributing to groceries. But all of a sudden, they determined that I owed them for each month that I had been there. I was aware that resisting would just exacerbate the situation. Confrontation was never well received by Beth or Richard. I made the payment. I worked really hard, saved as much money as I could, and paid them off by September 2023, right before I moved in with my lover Tom. The problem with my parents is that, even after Adam depleted their finances for his unsuccessful college attempts, they never asked for anything from him. But me? They were prepared to take advantage of me as soon as I had a steady job. I still hear my mother say, "We're just motivating you to be independent, Sarah." I wanted to yell, I was self-sufficient already. I had been all along. The cruise was the last straw. My parents revealed their ambitious idea for a family trip in late September. They suggested it would be a lovely, week-long Thanksgiving vacation, a cruise. I recall how my mother's face brightened as she talked about how much fun we would have and how wonderful it would be if Adam and his girlfriend Laura could come. "Since you have a good job now, you can buy your own ticket," she added after giving me a quick glance. I was hit hard by the remarks. I was taken aback. "Wait, you're paying for everyone else but not me?" I responded. My mom rehearsed the statement. "Adam's still finding his way. And Laura's family isn't well off. You can afford it, Sarah. It's not like you'd need a fancy room anyway." As if I should be thankful for simply being on the boat, crammed into a windowless cabin like an afterthought, they rationalized, "Not a fancy room." I wished to draw attention to the hypocrisy. Why was Adam receiving a suite if the rooms weren't important? If he was still finding himself at almost 30, why wasn't he paying his own expenses? I, of course, argued. I could afford the ticket, so it wasn't about the money. It has to do with justice. But when it comes to Adam, there is no such thing as fairness in my family. "Green isn't a good look on you, Sarah," my mother replied, shaking her head. "Green? Jealousy? More than anything, I detest that word. They always use it as an excuse, as if my annoyance is unjustified and my emotions are unworthy simply because I don't accept their obvious partiality. That evening, I left their home in a rage. Tom, who has always been there for me, advised me not to go. "You don't owe them this," he stated. I agreed with him for the first time. I decided that I was not going. There was silence in the weeks before Thanksgiving. I always change my mind, so my parents believed I would too. They believe I'm too terrified to upset the status quo and too weak to confront them. I let them believe it this time, though. I didn't let them know I wouldn't be attending. As they confirmed their plans, made hotel reservations, and discussed all of the excursions they would be going on, I remained silent. They didn't text me until the evening before the trip. "Be here by 8 a.m., so we can drive to New Orleans. Don't be late," wrote my dad. With my chest constricted, I gazed at the message. I then replied as follows. Since you didn't think I was worth the effort to include, I'll be spending Thanksgiving with Tom's family instead. Have a great trip with your favorite child. I then turned off the group chat. I felt powerful for the first time in years, as like I was choosing myself above their unachievable demands. I accepted the invitation from Tom's family to spend Thanksgiving at their cabin in Arkansas. I owed my parents nothing, not my money, not my time, and definitely not an apology. Tom grinned and gave me a forehead kiss when I informed him about the text. When he said, "Good for you," I wish I could describe how fantastic it felt. It didn't, at least not yet. Even when you know you're right, there's something about confronting your parents that makes you feel uneasy. However, I had had enough of being their afterthought. I had had enough of second place. There was silence in my flat on the morning of the cruise. Like the quiet before a storm, an odd silence descended upon everything. I stared at my muted phone while sipping my coffee. I knew they would begin messaging me shortly to inquire about my whereabouts and to remind me that the car was scheduled to depart in 30 minutes. My dad calling to inquire whether I needed gas money for the drive was something I partially expected. My phone vibrated on the counter at 8:15. As I let it buzz, I saw it glow against the rock like a firefly. "Where are you?" "It's past 8. We're waiting." I saw my mother looking at the clock and shaking her head, and I could almost hear her sigh of impatience. My dad had joined in by 8:30, using his typical direct tone. "Sarah, we are leaving for the port in 10 minutes. You need to hurry up." I had been rushing to fulfill their expectations, which weren't the same for Adam, for years. I could see my brother, half sleeping in the back seat of the car, laughing and cheerful. He most likely didn't even realize or give a damn that I wasn't coming. Rubbing his eyes from sleep, Tom entered the kitchen. As he poured himself a cup of coffee, he inquired, "They text you yet?" When I answered, "Of course they did. They'll figure it out soon enough." He gave me the look that indicated, "I know this is difficult, but I'm proud of you." It was too. Despite my desire to feel victorious, I was unable to do so. I felt as though a brick had been placed against my heart. I asked abruptly, "Do you think I'm being petty?" Tom took a seat across from me and spoke in a steady, calm tone. "Sarah, they made this choice. You're just showing them what it feels like to be left out. But they're my parents. I shouldn't." Tom put his elbows on the table and leaned forward. "Your parents treat Adam like he walks on water and act like you're a burden. You've bent over backward for them your whole life. You are not being petty, you're setting a boundary." Despite the fact that my stomach ached, I nodded. Their texts became increasingly desperate as the group chat began to hum once more. At last, I grabbed my phone, typed one message, and pressed send. "Since you didn't put in the effort to include me, I will be attending Thanksgiving with Tom's family instead. Have a great trip with your favorite child." I then placed the phone face down on the table and muted the conversation. Tom gave a small smile. "You're allowed to put yourself first, Sarah." All I could hope was that it would begin to feel that way. We prepared Tom's vehicle for the trip to his family's cabin that afternoon. Months before, almost as an afterthought, his mother, Linda, had extended an invitation to me. She had called and said, "We'd love to have you join us for Thanksgiving if you're free." I dismissed it at the moment, thinking I would be with my own family. Now it seemed weird, like if the cosmos had known all along. My chest started to relax as we made our way toward the cabin along winding back roads. The naked trees of late November stretched out like bony fingers toward the pale sky as the surrounding area opened up around us. I allowed the silence to envelop me like a blanket as I gazed out the window. After some time, Tom said, "Are you okay?" "I will be," I muttered. I wanted it to be true, but I wasn't sure whether it was. We were warmly received by Tom's family. His mother waved and smiled broadly as soon as we drew into the driveway and came out onto the porch. Like a cozy fire on a chilly night, Linda was one of those people who instantly put you at rest. "I'm so glad you're here, Sarah," she said as she came down the stairs to give me a hug. I returned her hug with a smile. "Thank you for having me." "Of course. We're thrilled to have you join us. Tom, grab her bags and get inside before you both freeze." The aroma of freshly baked pies and roasting turkey filled the cabin like a warm remembrance. While Tom's younger relatives raced around the living room, Tom's father, Paul, was in the kitchen basting the turkey. I couldn't recall the last time I had entered a family get-together and felt accepted and included. With a kind grin, Linda gave me a glass of wine. "Your family here, Sarah. Relax and enjoy yourself." Even though it was the most straightforward thing, I almost started crying. Tom and I got up early the following day, Thanksgiving morning, to assist with the preparations. While she and Paul worked on the food, his mother assigned us to arrange the table. The clatter of dishes, Music and laughter filled the place with vitality. Like a scene from a movie I'd always wanted to be in, it was crazy in the greatest way. I smiled as I watched Tom fold napkins into tidy triangles. "What?" He smiled at me and inquired. "Nothing," I replied. "It's just nice being here." He grabbed my hand and squeezed it. "You deserve this, Sarah." We went outdoors to play cornhole with Tom's cousins after supper. Naturally, I was awful. My aim was as precise as a kid throwing darts while wearing a blindfold. However, no one gave a damn. Tom burst out laughing as I missed the board entirely for the third time. He put an arm around my shoulder and teasingly said, "You're hopeless." "I'm trying my best," I answered, sharing his laughter. From across the yard, his cousin Ellie, who couldn't have been older than 12, spoke up. "You're doing great, Sarah. My mom says it's about having fun, not winning." I grinned. "I'll take it." We gathered around the fire pit that night, drinking hot cocoa while covered in blankets. Linda distributed marshmallows to be roasted. I felt calmer than I have in years as I watched the flames dance before me. I was treated like a member of Tom's family. No one made me feel alienated or asked me where I belonged. I didn't feel the need to prove myself to anyone for once. Linda smiled softly at me as we sat gazing at the flickering embers toward the end of the night. "Sarah, I know this is ultimately up to Tom, but I hope you'll join our family for real someday." I was taken aback by what she said, and my cheeks began to blush. I muttered, "I would be honored." Then, I meant it too. I felt lighter than I had in a long time as I laid in bed with Tom that night and looked up at the ceiling. Whispering, "Thank you for bringing me here." Tom turned over on his side and gave me a look. "You're welcome. But you don't have to thank me, Sarah. You belong here." His words sank in like rain after a drought, and I blinked back tears. This was where I belonged. I didn't have to plead for morsels of affection or struggle for a seat at the table. As I was sufficient. I felt free for the first time in my life. The Saturday following Thanksgiving, I felt lighter than I had in months when I woke up. With laughter, food, warmth, and no expectations other than simply being there, Tom's family made things seem so easy. You don't have to earn that kind of love, and I didn't understand how hungry I was for it. It was a quiet drive back to Dallas. As we discussed everything and nothing, including our plans for Christmas, future hikes, and how awful I was at cornhole, the trees outside became hazy striations of brown and yellow. Over the course of those few hours, I laughed more than I had all year. However, such lightness was short-lived. I finally picked up my phone when we returned to my place. I nearly felt bad about turning it back on after not checking it all weekend. With dozens of unread messages, pictures, and even a few missed calls, the group chat had blown up. As the screen filled with notifications, I gazed at it. There were photos from the cruise. One of my parents, smiling and sunburned, drinking, another of Adam and Laura on the ship's deck, with the ocean behind them like an infinite blue dream. Then the texts arrived. "Sad that you chose not to be with your family in such beautiful places." In those remarks, I could practically hear my dad's voice, composed, measured, and tinged with a hint of judgment. He never used the exact words, but it was the kind of message that made me feel bad. As I continued to scroll, I came across a text from my mother. "You should have been there. I hope you realize what you missed out on." What did I miss? I pondered. But what did they miss? What about how they treated me as though I wasn't important enough to start with? I read the text again and again while sitting on the edge of the couch, my cheeks flushed. Tom saw right away. He put his arm around my shoulders and sat down next to me. What did they say? To let him see, I held out the phone. Silently. "Same old story," I muttered. I should feel bad for missing out, not the other way around. Tom let out a sigh. "You don't have to justify your choices to them, Sarah." I answered. "I know, but I didn't feel like I knew anything." My mom's name appeared on my phone a few minutes later. A tiny part of me that still yearned for their acceptance picked up the phone when I considered ignoring it. She said, "Where were you?" right away. Although it wasn't soft, her voice wasn't angry either. Like a question with only one valid response, it was incisive. "I told you," I said, attempting to sound steady. "I spent the holiday with Tom's family." "You could have told us sooner, Sarah," she replied. "Do you know how cruel it was for you to let us believe you were coming and then just not show up?" I tried to suppress my fury by closing my eyes. "Mom, you told me to buy my own ticket. You didn't make me feel like I was part of the plan." She became defensive in tone. "We told you because you can afford it. It's not like you're struggling, Sarah. Adam and Laura needed the help." Even though I detested that it was, I said, My voice trembling now. And I didn't? Mom, I've spent my whole life having to earn everything. You've handed Adam everything on a silver platter, and I'm the one who gets called ungrateful. She yelled. That's not fair, Sarah. Adam needs help right now. You've always been independent. You don't understand how hard it is for him. She seemed to have slapped me. I swallowed the old, familiar frustration that tried to get up my throat. I muttered, I'm independent because you never gave me a choice. She was silent for a long time. At last, she stated, I'm not going to apologize for raising a strong daughter. You should be grateful for everything we've done for you. The phrase grateful felt like sandpaper against my flesh. All my life, I had been thankful for crumbs of affection, for unmet expectations, and for family holidays to which I was not invited unless I covered the cost myself. I was at my breaking point. I guess I'll just leave you alone, I replied. Since I'll never be enough for this family anyway. Before she could reply, I hung up, and the tears eventually came. With my entire body trembling, I buried my face in my hands. Immediately, Tom was there, sitting beside me and embracing me. It's okay, he muttered. You're okay. However, I didn't feel well. No matter how many times Tom assured me that I was sufficient, I knew that my parents would never be able to fill the void in my heart. Tom and I shared a pint of ice cream on the couch for the remainder of the evening. In an attempt to escape the weight of it all, we watched old films. Even though the tears were still threatening to come back, I allowed myself to laugh when Tom cited the corny dialogue. I felt empty by the time I went to bed. I got up early for work the following morning. There was silence on my phone. Don't text. No calls were missed. In some ways, my parents' silence was worse than their rage. They seemed to be waiting for me to say I was sorry and that I had overreacted, as I often had in the past. But I wasn't going to this time. I immersed myself in my job, utilizing the diversion to prevent myself from reflecting on everything that had transpired. I sent emails, revised technical manuals, and acted as if nothing was wrong. When my coworkers inquired about my Thanksgiving, I consistently responded with the same response. It was nice. I spent it with Tom's family. I kept the argument with my parents a secret from them. I kept the pictures, the texts, and the phone call that left me sobbing on the couch a secret from them. In actuality, I was ashamed. Shame that after everything they had done to me, I still desperately craved their acceptance. Tom and I sat on my apartment's balcony that evening and watched the distant blinking city lights. At last, I said, I don't know why it's so hard. Because they're your parents, Tom said. You want them to love you the way you deserve. That's not a bad thing, Sarah. I muttered. But what if they never will? After a period of silence, Tom said, Then maybe you have to stop asking for it. I knew he was right, so his comments were like a kick to the belly. I had begged for something my parents couldn't provide me with all my life. Perhaps it was time to give up. However, I wasn't yet prepared. My mother texted me when I woke up the following morning. We need to talk before Christmas. Let us know when you're free. I placed my phone down after staring at the message for a while. Christmas. That meant something to me. They didn't want the rest of the family to know why I wasn't there. They would want me to act like nothing had occurred, play nice, and smile for photos. However, I wasn't sure if I could still do it. I didn't anticipate how much the weeks before Christmas would weigh on me. Like a burden I couldn't release, my mom's text about having to talk hung in the back of my mind. At first, I thought they would just disregard it. However, I was acquainted with my parents. They weren't the type to tolerate unresolved conflict, particularly if it meant looking foolish in front of the other family members. I still hadn't responded by the middle of December, and the messages began to come in once more. My dad joined in this time. We can't just leave things like this, Sarah. Family means something. Let us know when we can talk. Family means something. I sat with those words for a long time, mentally reciting them over and over again. How did they define family? She said, Where were you? Right away. Although it wasn't soft, her voice wasn't angry either. Like a question with only one valid response, it was incisive. I told you, I said, attempting to sound steady. I spent the holiday with Tom's family. You could have told us sooner, Sarah, she replied. Do you know how cruel it was for you to let us believe you were coming and then just not show up? I tried to suppress my fury by closing my eyes. Mom, you told me to buy my own ticket. You didn't make me feel like I was part of the plan. She became defensive in tone. We told you because you can afford it. It's not like you're struggling, Sarah. Adam and Laura needed the help. Even though I detested that it was, I said, my voice trembling now. And I didn't? Mom, I've spent my whole life having to earn everything. You've handed Adam everything on a silver platter, and I'm the one who gets called ungrateful." She yelled. "That's not fair, Sarah. Adam needs help right now. You've always been independent, you don't understand how hard it is for him." She seemed to have slapped me. I swallowed the old, familiar frustration that tried to get up my throat. I muttered, "I'm independent because you never gave me a choice." She was silent for a long time. At last, she stated, "I'm not going to apologize for raising a strong daughter. You should be grateful for everything we've done for you." The phrase grateful felt like sandpaper against my flesh. All my life, I had been thankful for crumbs of affection, for unmet expectations, and for family holidays to which I was not invited unless I covered the cost myself. I was at my breaking point. "I guess I'll just leave you alone," I replied. "Since I'll never be enough for this family anyway." Before she could reply, I hung up, and the tears eventually came. Tom discovered me sitting at the table with my head in my hands in the kitchen that evening. I had been mentally going over the exchange with my mother over and again, analyzing each word, tone, and pause. Tom gently pulled out a chair to sit across from me and asked, "What happened?" "They want me to come for Christmas," I replied. She didn't apologize though, not really. It's like they don't even understand what they've done. With a groan, Tom reached for my hand. "Do you want to go?" I gave a headshake. "I don't know. I mean, part of me wants to, it's Christmas. I don't want to lose my whole family, but it hurts to keep pretending nothing's wrong," he concluded for me. "Yeah," I muttered. Tom gave me a handshake. "Then don't go, Sarah. You don't have to keep putting yourself in situations that hurt you." "But if I don't go, they'll tell everyone I'm being selfish," I replied. "They'll make it sound like I'm the problem. My mom knows how to twist things so it looks like I'm the bad guy." Tom remained silent for a while, as if he was attempting to find the proper words. Then he stated, "It doesn't matter what they tell other people. You know the truth." I could feel the pressure building as Christmas drew near. My mother contacted me twice more and left identical-sounding voicemails. She desired to make things more amicable. She desired the family's unity. She wished for me to let go of the past. I didn't return her call. My dad eventually sent a message the day before Christmas Eve. "This has gone on long enough, Sarah. You're coming to Christmas. We'll talk it out like adults, and then we'll move forward." It was an order, not a request. Before I erased the message, I looked at it for a while. Tom and I packed the car and headed back to his parents' property on Christmas Day. As if she had been waiting for us all morning, Linda welcomed us with a platter of cookies and a loving embrace. Squeezing my arm, she added, "I'm so glad you're here." I grinned, but my eyes didn't see it. I knew my parents would spend the day acting like everything was fine, but the truth was that I felt bad, guilty for not being with them. I pictured them at the dinner table, with my mom passing around the mashed potatoes and Adam giggling at something. I pondered whether they would inform everyone that I was too busy to go or that I was simply being challenging once more. I must have been deep in thought when Tom bent over and said in a whisper, "Hey, you don't have to feel bad about choosing yourself." "I know," I muttered. His family and I sat by the fire that afternoon and opened gifts. Tom's father gave me a mug that read, "You're part of the family, whether you like it or not." And Linda gave me a knitted scarf that was the softest thing I had ever felt. I almost started crying, but everyone laughed. I now understood what Christmas could be like for the first time in my life: cozy, stress-free, and effortless. No one was being cautious. No one was keeping score. It was love, pure and unreserved. I grinned as I turned to face Tom. Perhaps this was how family was meant to feel. For once, I didn't feel like I was stepping on a minefield as Christmas went by in silence. There were no harsh words, tight smiles, or passive-aggressive remarks to spoil the occasion, and Tom's family made the holiday feel effortless. After holding my breath for too long, I felt calm when I woke up the following morning, as though I had finally figured out what it meant to release it. However, that tranquility was short-lived. After 2 days, I turned my phone back on and discovered just what I had anticipated. Texts, voicemails, and missed calls. My absence had not gone overlooked, and my family had spent the holiday together. Late on Christmas night, my mother sent a message. "We missed you today, Sarah. Your absence really hurt your father." That was it. There were no explanations, no attempt to find out why I had avoided them, and no expression of regret for how they had made me feel so inferior. Rather, the responsibility had returned to me. The issue was me. They had been harmed by me. My parents seemed to live in a whole separate reality, where my emotions were non-existent unless they caused annoyance to another else. The shame hung like smoke in the back of my mind, but I chose to disregard the message and resume my life. A part of me knew that the decision I had taken was the right one. Why, though, did everything still feel so off? A few days later, Tom and I were watching a movie when my phone called. It was Adam, my brother. I hesitated when I saw his name on the screen. Adam didn't call me very much. He preferred to keep his hands clean and avoided getting involved in any arguments with our parents most of the time. Quietly, I asked Tom, "Should I answer it?" His words, "It's up to you," came as he squeezed my hand. After a moment of hesitation, I swiped the screen. "Hello? Sarah," Adam remarked in a cool, clipped voice. "What the hell happened?" I let out a sigh. "What do you mean?" "I mean Christmas," he continued, his voice beginning to grow irritated. "Mom and Dad were a wreck. They said you just ignored them and ruined the holiday." I saw my jaw getting tense. "I didn't ruin anything, Adam. I chose not to come because I'm tired of being treated like I don't matter." Adam exhaled heavily, the way he always did when he felt I was being tough. "Why do you have to make everything a big deal, Sarah? They're trying their best." "No, they're not," I remarked sharply. "Adam, they treat you like you're perfect. They pay for everything you need and never expect you to stand on your own. Meanwhile, I get $10,000 in rent thrown at me the second I get a new job. Do you not see how unfair that is?" Adam's comments, "You're just jealous," were as recognizable as an old scar. "You always have been." Again, that word. Jealous. As if my desire for justice made me the bad guy. With my voice trembling, I tightened my hold on the phone. "I'm not jealous, Adam. I'm exhausted. You get to make mistakes and get help. I don't. I have to be perfect just to earn the bare minimum, and I'm tired of it. Maybe if you stopped acting like a victim, they'd treat you differently." Adam replied bluntly. I thought he had slapped me. I was momentarily unable to even reply. That one sentence seemed to crush every shred of hope I had ever had for my brother. He was unable to comprehend. He didn't. I was the issue for him. It was me who created the commotion. At that moment, I understood that I had been mistaken to believe that Adam may one day see things for what they truly were. I replied softly, "Goodbye, Adam," and hung up before he could answer. I hid my face in my hands and placed the phone on the table. Even though I didn't want to cry, I did. Without a word, Tom grabbed me into his arms and let me express everything. "He doesn't get it," I muttered after some time. "He never will." "I know," Tom said. "But that's not your fault, Sarah." I couldn't stop thinking about that phone talk with Adam in the days that followed. I repeatedly rehearsed his remarks in my mind in the hopes that they might lessen the pain. However, they didn't. I reflected on how close we had been as children. Adam was my hero back then. He stayed up late playing video games with me and taught me how to ride a bike. When I was being teased at school, he was the one who defended me. I had believed that Adam was the only one who truly understood me. However, things had changed at some point. Adam had been more than glad to take the perks my parents gave him without question, and their partiality had caused a rift between us. I wanted to think he still secretly cared for me. In actuality, though, he had sided with them. Perhaps he didn't think so. Perhaps he believed he was merely maintaining harmony. However, it seemed like a betrayal to me. Although I wasn't convinced that version of my brother still existed, I still missed him. Tom and I observed the city lights one evening while sitting on the balcony, covered with blankets. After a hard day, the crisp but chilly air felt rejuvenating, like a reset button. "I've been thinking," I muttered. "About what?" Tom asked me as he turned to face me. "About cutting contact with them," I replied. Speaking the words aloud felt liberating, but they also felt heavy. "I mean, not completely. Not yet. But maybe I need to put some real distance between us. I need a break from all of this." Tom gave a nod. "You don't have to explain it to me, Sarah. I think it's the right move." The words, I feel guilty," I said. "They're still my family. And if I walk away, they'll tell everyone I'm the problem. I don't want to lose the rest of my family too." Tom grabbed my hand as he reached over. "Sarah, you can't control what they say about you. You can't change the way they see things. But you don't deserve to keep putting yourself through this just to make them happy." I took a deep breath while gazing at the skyline. "I don't know if I'm strong enough to do it." "You are," Tom asserted decisively. "You've been strong your whole life, Sarah. But this time, you're being strong for yourself. That's different." I listened to what he had to say. Perhaps he was correct. I had spent years trying to prove myself to my parents and going out of my way to get their love and acceptance. But it was never enough, no matter how hard I tried. Perhaps it was time to give up. Perhaps I should have chosen myself instead. I took a seat that evening and composed a letter to my parents. Mom, Dad, for a while, I need some space. I love you both, but I can't keep acting like everything is all right when it's not. I'm sick of being compared to Adam and feeling unimportant. I need time to decide what kind of relationship I want with you, so I need to take a break until then. I hope you understand. Before I pushed submit, I looked at the message for a long time. I experienced a peculiar sensation of relief when I eventually did, as if I had finally let go of something I had been clinging to for too long. With his hand on my knee, Tom sat next to me. How do you feel? Scared, was my honest response. But also, lighter. He smiled as he remarked, that's a good start. And I believed him for the first time in years.